Tonight's broadcast of the Competizione Performance League GT4 Pro-Am Cup America Series is brought to you by Malwa Transport, oversized cargo and trucking logistics specialists of Quebec. Visit their website on www.malwa-transport.ca. Good evening, race fans, and welcome to tonight's coverage of Season 4, Round 8 of the Competizione Performance League GT4 Pro-Am Cup America Series, powered by Malwa Transport and live exclusively on TRTN. As always, I am Regan Clark, and you join us here once again from England as we head into the second half of our British tour in the latter half of this season so far. As you now join us from Norfolk, here at the Snetterton circuit. Founded in 1951, comprised of 12 turns and 2.9, just a little under 3 miles of FIA Grade 3. The Snetterton circuit in its current 300 configuration sees competition of a primarily national assortment, though it wasn't always like this, as between 1960 and 1963 it served as home to a number of non-championship rounds of Formula 1 under the guise of the Lombank Trophy. Those races from 1960 to 1963 will be won by Innes Ireland, Jack Brabham, Jim Clark and Graham Hill. In the modern day, though, its main 4 series year-on-year, among several others, include TCR UK, British Superbikes, British GT, and its longest continuously ran series, the British Touring Car Championship, which has played here from Snetterton since 1979. A wonderful track then to find ourselves on here, and reeling again into the second half of our British tour before we head across the Atlantic to the United States from round 9 onwards, then briefly into Australia for the penultimate round of the championship before heading back to America over at Austin, Texas, at the circuit of the Americas. It has been an action-packed season so far, and reeling away from the shell shock that was the Alton Park round that saw many a chaotic incident over the course of that race, and some new wins to go with them. As taking a look into those previous wins, it would be the first in 6 rounds for Wishful Winnings, breaking the win drought that originally started after round 1 at Valencia. It would be Christian Lebay to collect on 2 more wins in round 7's offerings, with Adrian Zavala clearing house in semi-pro. Didier Potvin took 2 wins in the AMS, but an inaugural win came through for Christian Boisvert. The number 25 took his first victory of the season in the middle part of round 7. As far as where that concerns the championship standings, taking a look into things from the driver's side view of things as we follow on board at the moment with Breaking Point Racing's The Jackal. Starting things off in the Pro Championship, Christian Lebay leads the charge over David Tanguay in second. Vincent Simard now marks third place, with Wishful Winnings dropping from the podium now to 4th. Dylan Vekere rounds out the top 5 at this time, holding on to 186 points. Behind him in 6th place we find that of Carl Martel, the number 99, now 6th place I should say, with 7th place being that of Clinton Bourne behind him, having come up from the back of the top 10. 153 points there for the Aussie talent. He finds himself up at the head of fellow Aussie talent Brandon David in 8th place. Richard Cecil now marks 9th, with Justin Benton rounding out the top 10. Looking in towards the semi-pro standings then, Adrian Zavala continuing to open the lead over Ruben Pereira, and this will only be reinforced by that triple victory in Alton Park last week, as he stands 313 points to Pereira's 223. Joey Fisher now on the podium with 214 points. He's 3 points over that of this one here, the Jackal of Breaking Point Racing, 4th place, with Chili Peppers rounding out the top 5. Andrew Velkamp makes 6th place. Oh my goodness, as we see there, 2-wheel action from the Jackal and Chevrolet. 7th place for Isaac McMillan. We find then 8th place for Ivan Sanchez, having dropped significantly from the podium. Adam Jeffrey makes 9th place, and Aidan Christie rounds out the top 10 in semi-pro. Last but not least then, from the Drivers' Championship side of things, is the AM Championship. And we do note then, after last round, in the absence of Brandon Carr, Didier Potvin now sweeps the leg on the championship lead, holding it by 40 points over Cedric Grenier-Massey in second. Brandon Carr now having fallen to 3rd. Curtis Belbray makes 4th, with Matthew Shinosky in 5th. Up to 6th place now, Karina Stinson of Maserati, a single point away from the top 5. Ray Risti makes 7th place for Aston Martin, 8th place behind for that of Thomas Romano. Christian Boisvert now marks in the top 10 after his maiden win in AM with 106 points. He's 9th place, and up and ahead there of Casey Miles, who rounds out the top 10 in the AM Drivers' Championship. Taking a look then in towards the Teams' Championship standings before the discussion of today's regs, Malwa Racing continue that dominant streak in Pro and are now falling behind in semi-pro, with Breaking Point Racing now nearly 100 points in the clear. In the AM category, the gap starting to come down now, some 24 points roughly between the two. on the run-in towards today's endurance event. Meanwhile, changes then in both pro and semi-pro see a rejig of the top 5 from behind Malwar Racing. 161 Motorsports holds second, but Milk Crate Racing is now third over Team 16 and G-Force. In the semi-pros, Clutch Power Racing, that being the team currently of Adrian Zavala, stands close to a second place spot off of Malwar, with Florida Curva down to 4th, and Florida Engineering marks 5th place. Meanwhile, everything stays the same down in the AM division. Looking at the regs for tonight's event, you join us in the last 10 minutes of free practice with 30 minutes up and around the corner, the same qualifying structure that's presided over all of this season, but it will set the stage tonight, not for 3 races as it did in Alton Park, but for just the one. A 90-minute clash here at Snetterton with 2 mandatory pit stops to follow along with. That staggered qualifying session, as a reminder, first 10 minutes are the AMs, middle 10 minutes are the semi-pros, last 10 minutes are the pros. Going back onto the field here with the Jackal, as you can very clearly see in front of you, there is rainy conditions afoot. We were told mixed conditions on the run-in towards today's event. That is a bit of a, no pun intended, slippery slope when it comes to event setup, because when you slide the weather slider, even by a single percentile, it tenfold increases that risk of rain for today's event. And that certainly seems to be the case of what the drivers will be facing off against more than likely on the run-in towards qualifying. What a track we're at here today here in Snetterton. One with quite an illustrious history, sharing an origin story with another famous British track, that being Silverstone, as it too, like Silverstone, started its life as a Royal Air Force installation, the RAF Snetterton Heath Air Base. That was originally used by the Royal Air Force at the start of the Second World War. It would later be loaned out to the United States Army Air Forces from 1943 onwards. The airbase would close in 1948, following a few years after the end of the Second World War, and would be returned into the hands of its local landowner, that being Fred Riches. 3 years later, Riches would be approached by 2 members of the Aston Martin Owners Club, a certain Oliver Sear and Dudley Coram, who proposed the idea to use the now abandoned airbase to form a racetrack. Riches approved the idea, but on the conditions that there would be no racing between 10:45 AM and noon on Sundays, and that all racing would stop before evensong started. This was because that Fred Riches was a local church warden to the area and did not want racing to stand in the way of church duties. Nonetheless, then, the rest has been history some 75 years later. We're now given here what is a proper slice of British motorsports history, much like what we saw in Alton Park, much like what we see on the rest of the MSV lineup, the oldest of which in current service being the Donington Park circuit that was originally opened in 1933. Right now, in rain-soaked conditions, it's going to be difficult to muster the courage to conquer this track. As you can see, the ever-dominant Chevrolets, in spite of what we'll come to discuss in a moment's time, is one of their best BOP packages. You can see there in the background from Clinton Bourne are having an absolute howler here in the wet. Now, taking a look in towards those BOP changes, and we now catch on board here to that of Christian Boisvert following his first win in AM as of last week at Alton Park. Chevrolet find themselves, and I had to scratch my eyes for this one, 40 kilos of weight reduction for today's round of the championship. Now, that really does cross me as a bizarre change, given that Chevrolet, for the last 4 seasons, including this one, has been the single most dominant manufacturer in GT4 racing on this side of the pond. Audi find themselves with 17 kilos off. McLaren lose 11, and losing only 2 kilos will be Chevrolet's arch rival, the Mercedes-AMG GT4. In the weight gain department, Aston Martin gains 7 kilos, BMW gain 8. Double figures from here on out as Maserati gains 16, Alpine gain 22, and that's a burden shared by fellow featherweight, the Porsche 718 Cayman, also with a 22 kilo ballast. It really did shock me to see 40 kilos shed from the 6th gen Camaro. As mentioned before, it has been and continues to be the most dominant presence in GT4 racing. You can definitely make the argument that's been spearheaded in large part by the presence of the Malwar Racing team, but there would also be, and it'd be remiss to mention that there was not also the contribution there from Breaking Point Racing and Milk Crate Racing in this series in putting Chevrolet in this high position. We just note there in chat as well, thank you very much to Christian LeBay for subscribing at Tier 1. They've been subscribed to us now for 9 months. And take a look in towards today's session. And as it stands at the moment, Labay by 8/10 in the lead here, but it's worth noting that conditions have worsened since the start of free practice nearly some hour ago. So it has gotten wetter. It started off in a more damp condition here, and now we are looking closer towards full wet, if not flooded conditions in some areas of the track. So for David Tanguay, try as he may, he's going to struggle to find anything close to 8/10 worth of an improvement to go ahead of Labay before the run in towards qualifying in a few minutes' time. Adrian Zavala heads up the field from third for the semi-pros. Currently that fastest in division, fastest in the AMS at the moment, and this is a curiosity. His recent race winner, Christian Boisvert, now he had a real spring in his step in Alton Park, delivering his first division win of the season, and really you can see for Boisvert, he's kept the ball rolling, so to speak, because that number 25 is quite a fair distance from Didier Potvin, the new AM Championship lead for Aston Martin and Malois Racing. With the recent departure then of the Alpine of Brandon Carr, that has left the throne vacant in the AMS. Potvin now usurping that lead, and you can see him stacked alongside there, his fellow championship rival by 40 points here, Cedric Grenier-Massey of Let's Race Mate BMW at the end of today's session. There have been some rumours flying through the paddock. Of course, there have been plenty over the course of the season, some of which confirmed, some of which have not been. One of the latest rumours as we now head in towards qualifying. That session just gets underway now, so of course the first 10 minutes over towards the AM drivers as we wait to see them off the exit of the pits. That will be there by the looks of it for Matthew Shanowski of Florid Engineering. He'll be the first out among the fray. Now, one of the rumours we heard was over in the semi-pro paddock, where in and around the possible transfer of Ruben Pereira. Now, we'll see him later on in today's session, but there is the possibility Ruben Pereira may have been signed to Breaking Point Racing. Now, there has been some rapid expansion strategies between the two big teams of the Teams Championship, Malois Racing and Breaking Point Racing. They've been effectively playing a long game of chess here with one another, and this is their latest move, is to sign Ruben Pereira. Right now, then, it's Breaking Point Racing's attempt to solidify their lead of the Semi-Pro AMS Championship. Moreover, it's to have a stake in the possibility of a Semi-Pro Drivers Championship, as Pereira, albeit by a growing margin, is the closest to the current Semi-Pro division leader, that being Adrian Zavala. It is going to be, I imagine, quite a long day, though, for one of the AMs here, the number 800 of Karina Stinson. Now, this takes some serious guts to pull off, because as we know already, this has been quite the handful, even for Karina, and this is definitely going to be where her loyalties to Maserati will be put to the absolute test. That car has no ABS, it has no traction control, it's got north of 440 horsepower, 8 cylinders, and a death wish. Right now, corralling it to form is Karina Stinson on her way down through Hamilton. Let's go to catch on board with the leading cars. We go back in to find that of Matthew Shanowski on his way up through Brundle and Nelson, as he'll be our track tour guide here at the Snetterton circuit for the first flying laps of quali. Before we get to that, though, a quick glance at the qualifying predictions. Right now, though, sadly, no AMs found in that top 10, and this will be a more relevant conversation for semi-pro and pro later on. Closest margin in those predictions has been for second, where rather curiously, Christian Labay is down in third. More on that, though, when we head in towards the semi-pro section of today's qualifying session. Right now, though, with just under 8 minutes, the AMs. And starting the charge is Matthew Shanowski. On board then to Matthew Shanowski, having not long ago made his transfer from Chevrolet to Mercedes, having swapped sides here on the growing two-manufacturer war. Now starts off today's flying lap down through Riches we go then, here at turn 1. Riches, of course, named after Fred Riches, the landowner of the Snetterton circuit, the former RAF Snetterton Heath Airbase, now in through Montreal. Now, after 2016, this was renamed to Wilson in honour of Justin Wilson. Down through towards Palmer, named after Jonathan Palmer. Now making our way up towards this open hairpin left down at Agostini, named after Giacomo Agostini. Making our way then up towards turn 5. You can really get the understanding here, the kitchen sink being thrown at the drivers in the first and second sector. Corners of all varieties down through Hamilton, then named after Sir Lewis Hamilton, through Oggies, now named after Peter Ogden. And now heading up through to Williams, named after Frank Williams. Of course, founder of the Williams F1 team and Williams Engineering. Now down the Bentley straight. Pretty self-explanatory, named after Bentley. Sadly, no Bentleys for us today here, as they never made a GT4. My way in towards Brundle and Nelson, named after Martin Brundle, of course, former F1 driver and famed British broadcast commentator. Also named after Lord Nelson, otherwise Vice Admiral of the White Horatio Nelson, first Viscount Nelson, first Duke of Bronte, hero of Britain. Through turn 10 in towards turn 11 at Dudley Corham. I suppose more just relevantly Corham, named after Dudley Corham. And on our way in towards Murray's. Final corner of the track, turn 12, named after the late Murray Walker. Down to the line we go then with Matthew Shinosky, the first among the fray here at Snetterton. And let's see what the times are pouring out to be in wet conditions as we head in past qualifying today. 2:03.267, the first time of today's event. And following him to the line, nearest will be the number 35, the new championship lead. This is Didier Potvin from Malwar Racing Aston Martin. Potvin to the line. Where does he find himself? Only by about 925 thousandths. That is quite a surprising margin. From behind him approaches that of the 626 of Cedric Grenier-Massey. Now goes up into second. From behind is Christian Boisvert. Goes up into second himself. 133 thousandths away from Shinosky. Halfway through their tenure in today's qualifying session. That is quite a surprise. A very solid opening time then by Shinosky. Stinson to fifth. 5.4 seconds though. You can really get the understanding here. More than anyone else on the grid, she is having to fight with that machine. And it's impressive to see that she's able to keep that Maserati under wraps at all, but you can see her performance is struggling in the long run. This might be a bit of a dark chapter compared to her previous tenure at KTM. You see Curtis Bell-Bray to the line, 5th place now over that of Karina Stinson. Two separate by about 9/10 of a second. Right now, the only AM car yet to have come out on track is Casey Malles, for reasons currently unknown to us. He's yet to make his way onto the track for today. So it's Shinosky of Florida Engineering leading over Boisvert and Grenier-Massey in the top 3. Then Potvin 4th, Bell-Bray 5th, and Stinson in 6th. In terms of favourite corners, as we know that was a question asked to us a moment ago by Wishful Winnings in his 20-minute long waiting time now as he waits to get out onto the track alongside the rest of the pros. It's a curious one. I'm quite a big fan of the Oggies and Williams section, this almost bone-shaped section of the track that loops back in on itself, because there's a lot of action that comes down in that area following out of Hamilton, and it also serves as our bridging point up through the Bentley Straight. Another, I would say, though, honourable mention would be Montreal, otherwise Wilson. Because that hairpin there, it's a big run-up into it. There's a lot of action that happens in that spot, whether it's GT4, whether it's GT3. I'd even hazard a guess the GT2s. That'd be an absolute riot in that section of the track. It's a very traditional hairpin corner. It's bog-standard racing stuff. It does make Snetterton then one of the better tracks for new drivers to practice on, because this is a very by-the-books hairpin. You see here, this is Montreal at turn 2. We now note Christian Boisvert, the new fastest in today's session, 2:02.5, the new fastest time by the number 25. 6/10 in the clear over Didier Potvin, who very briefly had pole position off of Matthew Shinosky. Nearest is the 15, so here's Curtis Bell-Bray. It was a very curious moment for Bell-Bray in Alton Park last week. Now having picked himself back up, the Breaking Point Racing number 15, currently 5th at this time. As it stands to be the case, he's about 3.9 seconds from Cedric Grenier-Massey's time. We'll see if he can find anywhere close to that over the course of this lap, as he does have, by looks of it, just the squeeze of about 2 laps available to him before he has to come into the pit lane and the semi-pros get to come out and play. Now, I imagine from the pit lane, as we just see there off into the grass, goes the number 15, skips across. It looks like a very flat plane of grass there as he smashes his way through the braking board. Well, the semi-pros and the pros will not be happy with that, but not much he could do once you get up onto the grass. Alton Park already demonstrated that to us in many such cases, and now we don't even have the benefit of it being dry grass the drivers slip onto. We're in wet conditions here, and it looks like that'll carry in towards that 90-minute race with any chances so far. We're told that the rain is set to pick up in about 10 minutes. So for the pros, they actually look to be emerging to a disadvantage on today's grid. They may even skip out pole position. So the semi-pros have this very curious spot now where they could more than definitely challenge for an outright pole position today. It'd be remiss to say that even some of the faster AMs may have a very good chance of a top 5 in the case of Christian Boisvert and Matthew Szynoski, who we see now by 277 thousandths away from Boisvert. Nearest is the 35, Potvin looking to regain second and moreover trying to go for pole position. He does find an improvement, but stays in a reluctant P3. So they've just about a minute left to go before the release of the semi-pros onto the track. Nearest to the line at this time, making his way through Brundle and Nelson, is that of Curtis Belbray. We can see it's been a very ropey lap for him. We saw it already was trouble for him down at turn 1, just trying to get himself into the possibility of another flyer by looks of things at this time. Rain often cited then as the great equaliser in motorsports, and this could really create quite a curious set of circumstances for qualifying today. Very rare is it we have changeable weather conditions in the course of a qualifying session, and that does create this sort of big crunch zone now for these drivers as we barrel down the last 30 seconds of the AM section of qualifying. We're about to see the release of the semi-pros onto the track. You can see some of them already making their way down. In fact, I believe that might be one of the pro... No, it in fact is one of the semi-pro Chevrolets. That's Adam Jeffrey. We see there Adrian Zavala getting out alongside him, the current lead of that division. Now, I believe our timing systems are a little bit slow, so he's not exceeding his boundaries there, but we are now in the semi-pro section. You can see rocketing his way out from behind. That, I believe, yes, was Isaac McMillan. A very cinematic start to his qualifying endeavours here. And now, as we see the end of the AM section of qualifying, I believe the last left out among them here is this one, Christian Boisvert, who takes division pole in the AMs, a 2:02.5, the outright fastest time so far to beat for the semi-pros, as Szynoski and Potvin withdraw to the pit lane. So let's go to catch on board with Zavala, the championship lead in the semi-pro division. So we see the Aston Martins already making their way out on track. We also just note there, that was Ruben Pereira, one of the rumoured recent acquisitions from the Breaking Point Racing team. Now that is a rumour that apparently states that he'll be joining for Season 5. So nothing currently written in stone for Season 4 for Ruben Pereira. But let's go to catch on board with Adrian Zavala as we get back in to the discussion of the qualifying predictions. So a lot more relevant for the semi-pros, as 4 of them currently man into that top 10. Zavala looking fastest among them, with Fisher in the division 2nd, Jeffrey division 3rd, Jackal division 4th. Outright then comprises a predicted 6th, 8th, 9th and 10th. It's worth noting as well, if you take a look at the times between Winnings and Zavala, that is the back end of that predicted top 5. Behind a Chevrolet 1 through 4. There is the possibility for Zavala, especially given the fact that we are now facing wetter conditions within the next 10 minutes. So these laps will be absolutely crucial for the semi-pros right now, because they could emerge from the shadow of the pro drivers in today's event. That could just be the conditions that give rise to the possibility of an outright semi-pro division win. Now, not impossible to see. We have seen lower division drivers compete for outright victories in other championships. I think one notable case was that of Daz Kane in his silver division tenure during the TRC GT Manufacturers Cup, to 2 outright wins from silver in his KTM Crossbow GT2. And while we've yet to see anything of the sort here in the GT4 Pro-Am Cup America Series, these are certainly trying circumstances, and they certainly could create the environment necessary for such miracles. Following on board then with Adrian Zavala as he starts his first flyer. So, of course, right now is a 2:02.5 to beat in today's session from Christian Boisvert. Zavala will be challenging for the outright pole position. It will give him the best spring up onto the rest of the competition later in today's session. Right now, we are, yes, just double-checking the radars. It is increasing rain in the next 10 minutes. Within the next 30, it will be torrential downpour. So just escaping that off the exit of this session, that still does mean wetter conditions are on the way for the pros in about 7 minutes' time. Time's money then for Adrian Zavala. The pros will scurry out of that pit lane with all caution thrown to the wind. Now, discussing his progress, of course, Adrian Zavala made history this season by taking an outright clean sweep of the semi-pros in the triple header at round 7 at Alton Park. He was uncontested in his division. Zavala now holds a very confident lead over Ruben Pereira, who last saw victory in division back in round 3 in our last visit to that, I believe, of Kyle Lamy. Yes, that was, and I now seem to remember that round because we did have that really unfortunate technical interruption during that time. Following them with Zavala. And so far it's looking particularly strong. You can see, though, the conditions have had quite a pronounced effect on what his free practice times were concerned with, about 3.5 seconds off of that beat, but down towards the line he goes. Right now needs a 202.5 to beat as he makes his way down towards the line. It's going to be close. Can he have it up and away? Yes, he can. 201.692. The new fastest time by Adrian Zavala. Nearest to the line will be Adam Jeffrey from behind him. That'll be the 42, followed by the number 27, the Aston Martin of Brad Peacock. It was invalidated for Jeffrey. It was not for Peacock. He's 5th place now. From behind him, the 616, Andrew Veldkamp to the line. Where does he find himself on the chart? 7th. Tucked in behind 4 of the AMs. Nearest from behind is Joey Fisher. No valid time set for him. Number 61 is nearby, Isaac McMillan, who had a very excitable start from the pit lane. Embracing his inner action hero there, getting a very, very stylish power slide off the exit of his pit box. But you can see it's not really done him many favours because right now he's without a valid time. And without really any ground on the road, as it would stand here, as he's taking a bit of an escapade off in towards the runoff at turn 1 at Riches. You can see just how slippery it is there. That's going to be a huge factor for today's event, because if you run off in that area, really, there's only tow trucks that can save you in that situation. There will be absolutely no grip, even on these grooved wet tyres. Now, nearest to the line is going to be that number 42, if I am reading this correctly. So that will be for Adam Jeffrey. Making his way through to Brundle and Nelson in towards turn 10. A slight elbow corner here, the bomb hole corner, named after the crater created by, of course, a bomb. Does have that little dip in the middle as well, so that does allow the drivers, even on this slightly sharper elbow style corner off the exit of Brundle and Nelson, to sort of hook in there, slingshot the car out towards Coram. Down to the line we go, though, with Adam Jeffrey. Will this be the valid one he's been seeking out? He has got about 3.5 minutes before the end of his time here in qualifying. It was not valid for him. Peacock to the line from 5th. Where does he find himself now? Staying exactly where he stands. As for the 616 from 7th, stays where he is. We're starting to see the possibility of even the semi-pros plateauing under these conditions, so it could be pay dirt here for Boisvert, Shanosky and Potvin, the top 3 in the AM division, who still retain a footing in the top 5. Joey Fisher was across the line a moment ago for Florida Engineering. We saw from Shanosky, his teammate, has had quite a whale of a time here in the wet conditions at Snetterton so far, with 3 minutes left to go. Fisher may be without a line, so to speak, here. The 46 is nearest, so next to the line is Zavala, his own time to beat, mind you, 201.692. Something that, rather surprisingly, in the last 8 minutes, he has not been able to usurp just yet. Across the line, though, will we see it? No. This is a rather concerning state of affairs here, folks. Not that I think the AMs are particularly too fussed by it, because they are holding some very, very powerful positions here among that top 10, as the track condition is off, really off-piste now. We are not on the mend by any stretch of the imagination. Now, it is still considered damp, but I'd say we're right on that teetering point before it gets into classifiably wet conditions. 42 nearest. Still seeking out a valid time here, and he's got one more lap to make true of it, is Adam Jeffrey of Malwar Racing Chevrolet. Malwar Racing lagging behind Breaking Point Racing in the semi-pros at the moment. They're nearly 100 points away. 99 points currently the gap between the two leading teams in the semi-pro teams championship. Meanwhile, they are closing ground rather significantly in AM through the duties of Didier Potvin. Down to the line we go then with Jeffrey. Better late than never is the first of his valid flyers. We'll see it to the line for the 42. Where does he land himself, if even in the top 10 across the line? And there to 5th place, up and ahead of Brad Peacock. What's the rebuttal from the number 27? Down to the line he goes. Can he retain his position? No. And the 616 follows. And is it another plateau here for Veldkamp? Yes, it is. This is a growing concern we're seeing mounting on the grid here. McMillan yet to have set a time. We're about to see one here by looks of it for Joey Fisher of Florida Engineering Mercedes. And across the line, he's 9th. Tucked in just ahead there of Ruben Pereira, but in behind Veldkamp. And only just clinging to the margins of a top 10. So this is a very concerning spectacle for the pros, because they've got 50 seconds before they're released onto the track. A track broadly different than what the AMs faced off against at the start of this qualifying session. Zavala, with one more stab at things here, is down to the line to try and one-up his own time. Not that I think he'll need to, because it looks like he could very likely, and we just see an extension of it there, it could very likely come to be an outright pole for Zavala if these conditions continue to worsen. A 201.482, the new fastest time. The 61 is nearest. McMillan of Team 161 goes to 5th. Very solid turnaround for Mercedes at this time, but Aston Martin in the top 5 is a very grand curiosity from that of Didier Potvin. But we are about to see the release of the AM driver, not the AM, sorry, the pro drivers. The AMs already having come out and the semi-pros before them. Well, semi-pros after them, as now we do get the release there into pro the last 10 minutes of today's session. So a bit of a muddled start from us, but we do see then first among the fray, the early bird in the number 23, Wishful Winnings. Of course, still reveling at his first win in 6 rounds following a win drought since the opening round of the championship in Valencia. Now, we know already that Chevrolet struggles on flatter tracks, and while there isn't exactly a flat track ahead of us here at Snetterton, it is one that lacks a lot of sort of vertical features, so to speak. Still think among the flattest is regarded by many on the British itinerary, at least, is looking to be Silverstone, at least in our available assortment, but we will not be seeing that until at least next season, of which hopefully in the next couple of weeks we'll have more information to divulge with you. We do know what the calendar's looking like, but due to confidentiality agreements at this time, we can't reveal anything on the air beyond the fact that Silverstone's on it. Winnings then first out among the fray, taking a quick glance back then to see that Adrian Zavala now holds the outright pole position and the semi-pros over the AM pole position of Christian Boisvert. Adam Jeffrey makes division 2nd from 5th, McMillan 3rd from 6th. That is quite the shocker. So let's go to catch on board to the Mercedes of Wishful Winnings. And our next drive around the track, we catch him here along the Bentley Straight. So on board to Winnings, as mentioned before, finally having broken the wind drought off. Does he feel lucky in tonight's event? Mercedes had formidable performance in Valencia, where he claimed his first ever GT4 Pro-Am Cup America Series win. Is he feeling any luckier tonight, being the question? Well, that's what we're here to find out, as he, alongside the rest of the pros for the next 8.5 minutes, must face off against an unbridled state of affairs here at the Snetterton circuit, one broadly different than what the AMs faced off against some 20 minutes ago. Will they have a shot at pole position? Adrian Zavala is the one to beat from semi-pro, and he really did have to have quite a Hail Mary send in the middle of that session. Could this be just smoke and mirrors, or is there a lot more going on that meets the eye in terms of the weather today? As, of course, from our point of view, it doesn't look like it's got really any heavier for the rain. It seems to have been a very consistent pitter-patter of rain over the course of today's qualifying session. We're on with Winnings, though, for the start of the first pro flying lap. We know that in the last couple of weeks, Winnings' performance in qualifying has been on the up and up. He has routinely challenged for pole position. Wet conditions could be the unifier he's looking for here. It's worth noting that towards the end of free practice, that time set by Christian Lebay, one that he himself could not get any further towards it by the end of that session, was set when the session was still in damp conditions before it came into properly wet conditions, much like what we're seeing now at this time. Already having burnt through 3 minutes of their available time here in qualifying, it is looking a bit dire for the pros, but we'll see the first of those laps roll on through, hopefully from the 23. If it's not from him, it'll be from David Tanguay behind, and if it's not from Tanguay, it will be from Christian Lebay behind. Making his way around Williams onto the Bentley Straight, where we caught on with him a moment ago. Mercedes has proven itself to be a very strong part of this grid. They've yet to properly challenge that of Chevrolet for the championship title. We do just note there, disqualified was the number 6 of Clinton Bourne. We did note there had been some troubles for the Australian talent over the course of free practice, but that really did come to an ugly end for him as he was driving in the wrong direction in efforts to try and get back onto the track. Wishful winnings then. The first of the pros down towards the line then as he makes his way through Coram into Murray's. We'll see what the times are looking like here for him. We are now informed these are officially wet conditions in the last 6 minutes of qualifying. So this could very well be a bit of a one-stop go here for the pro drivers across the line. Winnings to second. From behind him will be, by looks of it there, the number 30. Goes fastest. That's David Tanguay. Following him is the 119 of Christian LeBay. To the line, second fastest by half a second. The 99 across the line, Carl Martel, makes 5th place. Adrian Zavala is still in that top 5, but down 1 position, though, there with the arrival of Vincent Simard to 2nd place. Now, to bring back up the qualifying predictions as the times continue to pour in from the pros at this time, it was predicted that Tanguay would hold this pole position. It was Bourne predicted at 2nd, so that's gut-wrenching that he's had that disqualification. But it has invited in Vincent Simard to come and have a go here. He's 3/10 up the field from his teammate Christian LeBay, and a Chevrolet 1, 2, 3 at this time. Again, did definitely beg the question why they needed 40 kilos in tonight's round, considering they don't really need to have any more hand-holding this season. As we see then, Simard pulling to one side just before Agostini. LeBay still out on track, still leading that charge is the 23. Making our way then to Brundle and Nelson. Number 23 just hanging on by looks of things here to the top 5. Needs about 3/10 of a second on Adrian Zavala. A formidable time from the 46. The Mexican talent up in that top 5 from a lower division. Normally it has been the story over the many months this series has been around. I'd say we're actually over a year for it now, that the Chevrolets and the Pro Division drivers have dominated that space. It looked like a bit of a ropey run there in the 3rd sector for winnings. We'll see it though down to the line. He's got 4 minutes left to go alongside the rest of the pros on the field. Behind him will be the 30, the current pole sitter. Winnings to the line, stays 5th. Tanguay to the line, stays right where he is. No improvement found there. The 119 intercepts from 3rd. Does he find himself any closer? Yes, he does. But not by enough to shift him from 3rd place. The 99 across the line. Martel stays in 6th. And it is an uneasy state of affairs here, one that could very likely see Christian LeBay, for the first time in quite some time, out of the front row. The gap between himself and Vincent Simard at this time, just having a quick glance at the maths here, that currently speaking is 17 thousandths of a second. But neither of them yet to be capable of holding a candle to that leading time by David Tanguay. Now, it's worth noting, taking a look back through those previous wins once again, only 2 rounds ago did Tanguay see his last win. So not as much a win drought as we saw for winnings, but one that certainly could do with some quenching after 2 rounds away. Again, more and more, I think this is less of a rumor now, more of an unofficial announcement that Pereira is going to be moving to Breaking Point Racing over the course of Season 5. Speaking of Ruben Pereira, he does find himself currently 17th on this grid. Rather curiously then, having stayed out of qualifying was Miles and Jackal. Bourne was disqualified, so a very curious development. Number 23 down through turn 10. So you see slides his way along the curbs. He's got to be careful of that area over the course of the race if we are to face off against conditions like these. Now, it could still be a bit of a turn of a head here, and we could actually see dry conditions. That's the nature of mixed conditions here. You never quite know what it is you're going to get. Much like the famous quote from Forrest Gump, life is like a box of chocolates, but I suppose Snetterton is also like a box of chocolates at the moment, except it is very, very wet. Winnings to the line from 5th, stays where he is. 119 approaches. Here's LeBay. Can he go up to pole position being the question? He can go to second, but not quite yet on pole. Behind him, 99, Carl Martel, now with one more lap to play with. He's 6th place still at this time on the back end of the 3rd row alongside Wishful Winnings. Adrian Zavala still holds that cheeky spot in the top 5. That is quite remarkable from the 46. I would even go as far to say it's been very solid hustle here as well from the AMs to find themselves with such a strong position. There are 3 AMs in the top 10, Boisvert, Shanosky and Potvin. And that is quite a surprising turn of events here in Snetterton. I believe, looking at it, the nearest to the line is going to be the 161, Dylan Vekere, so he'll get one more stab at a flyer here today. I'm not so sure the same can be argued of the 120, but we will see it to the line. Going down across the line then to serve his last flying lap, the 161 of Dylan Vekere. One more shot here at a top 6. Right now finds himself just backing onto that 4th row alongside the AM pole sitter, Christian Boisvert, following his inaugural win of the season. And as I do read it there, the 120 was in trouble just after Nelson. That's Vincent Simard relinquishing his position in qualifying, as now he'll stay 3rd at the best of times. That does net away 2nd at the worst of things for Christian Labey at this time. You can see a little trouble for him as well out through Brundle and Nelson. That could compromise his efforts to intercept this one here. The number 30 of David Tanguay, who pulls to one side just before turn 10. 23's nearest, so first to end his session on track here at the end of qualifying. Looks to be Wishful Winnings. He slides his way through Coram in towards Murray's. We see, though, runs out wide as onto the grass, so that's his time in qualifying over. The 119 follows from behind with the 30 in interception range. But as it looks to be the case, that little slip up in Sector 3 was enough to put the nail on the coffin for Christian Labey's attempt at pole position. It solidifies command for David Tanguay on pole. And like we mentioned for Wishful Winnings having strong qualifying form in the last couple of weeks, the same can tenfold be argued for David Tanguay. He's been one of the more consistent drivers to challenge Labey for pole, and today serves as no different an example. Pole position for David Tanguay in the pro and outright position, with Adrian Zavala semi-pro pole from 4th place. A remarkable turn there for semi-pro. And in the AM division, it's Christian Boisvert from an outright 8th position on division pole, ahead of Matthew Shanosky and Didier Potvin. What a oddball session we faced off against here in qualifying for round 8 of season 4 of the Competizione Performance League GT4 Pro-Am Cup America Series, powered by Malwa Transport. Snetterton has been quite a solid destination for racing, as we'll come to see over the course of this 90-minute endeavour. And taking a look back in towards those regulations before we head in towards the formation lap today, you can see 2 mandatory pit stops for fuel as per listings by race control. 90-minute race ahead of us here for round 8. Only 4 more rounds after today, and we are told that round 8 will be that second wave of drop points. So we've had the single worst round removed from the scorings. We now have the 2 worst rounds to be removed. So there will be a bit of a rejig of things there on the run towards rounds 9 and 10 on our drop in towards the United States. And taking a look at that calendar again briefly, of course, to come up ahead of today's round, we head to Watkins Glen in New York, and Indianapolis in Indiana at rounds 9 and 10 as we head in towards the month of September. Then we take a trip across the Pacific on the penultimate round to Bathurst in New South Wales, Australia, of which we visited not too long ago on our coverage of the NLRL Sunday League. Sorry, not on the NLRL Sunday League. We'll visit that soon on the NLRL Sunday League. I mean, Fats GT, where we last visited it there. Had a little bit of a few gears weren't turning where they should have. Less on that and more on to the news. And one such rumour currently circulating in the world of motorsports pertains to one Yuki Tsunoda. Currently, the Red Bull driver is rumoured to a move to IndyCar. There have been rumours flying around he's been in talks with Meyershank Racing, possibly looking at an exit strategy from Red Bull and moving over towards IndyCar. Well, he would not be the first Formula 1 driver to be doing so as of recently. In fact, if you caught on with us in our last coverage over on Fats GT, we discussed the recent results over in Markham, the Ontario race of this year's IndyCar Championship, which was fought out by 2 former F1 talents, Marcus Ericsson and Romain Grosjean. Right now, though, not much evidence exists to support this case. We do know there are people in the paddock talking on the possibility of Tsunoda's move towards IndyCar. The other article of news we have at the moment is from the British Touring Car Championship. Following their strongest weekend of their inaugural season, Plato Racing, otherwise Cataclean Plato Racing, has gone into administration, but has been bailed out by their title sponsor, Cataclean, who will now rebrand the team, with Jason Plato stepping down from managerial positions at the former Plato Racing team after their next break. They'll be heading to Donington Park with a full rebrand, following their first 1-2 of the season, courtesy of Adam Morgan and Dan Robotham, at the Knockhill circuit in Scotland. Well, with just under 2 minutes left to go before the formation lap, taking a look at the grid for Season 4, Round 8 of the GT4 Pro-Am Cup America Series by Competizione Performance League. It's David Tanguay on pole position, with Christian Lebay in second, Vincent Simard in third, Adrian Zavala in fourth, and Wishful Winnings rounds out the top five. Carl Martel in sixth, with Dylan Vecchiere in seventh. Christian Boisvert heads up the AM field from eighth, Matthew Shanowski in ninth, and Didier Potvin rounds out the AM podium from the back of the top 10. From 11th to 20th, we have Jeffrey, McMillan, Veldkamp, Peacock, Grenier Massey, Fisher, Pereira, Stinson, Mals and Jackal. On the 11th row of the grid behind them, Clinton Bourne following a disqualification, and Curtis Belbray, I believe they're following a disconnect. So curious development for Belbray. Otherwise then, your division pole sitters in the Pro Division is David Tanguay. In the Semi-Pro Division is Adrian Zavala. And as mentioned before, your AM pole sitter is the 25 of Christian Boisvert, who took his first division win last week in Alton Park. He'll be one to watch over the course of this 90-minute race. We are on dry conditions here, and a rather surprising turn to events at this time. Current weather radar, yes, does have it that within 15 minutes of the race start, we are anticipating the start of wet conditions to follow. We're a moment away from getting on board to David Tanguay, with a 30-second warning coming up right about now. On to the number 30. We'll leave you with Tanguay for the start of the formation lap, and when we rejoin you, we'll take a look in towards the overtaking opportunities available to us in what could be an incredibly hectic opening quarter hour of racing here in the 90-minute Enduro at Snetterton. Back to you in a moment. So just leaving Montreal then, here with David Tanguay. You can see it is dry conditions for the first 15 minutes of racing today, but some drivers, as you can see, are electing for the dries. Others are floating the suggestion of wet tyres and looking to firm the difficulties that follow. The 161 of Dylan Vecchiere has resorted to a pit lane start in the panic that followed this sudden change of events. Looking at the overtaking opportunities then here at the Snetterton circuit, of course, Montreal will represent the first of our major overtaking opportunities down at turn 2. Following closely thereafter, 2 corners later at Agostini would be another overtaking opportunity, one hairpin slightly larger in terms of its size compared to Montreal. Down through Hamilton and in towards Oggies is another overtaking opportunity. Off the exit of Williams along the Bentley Straight will be a great chance for the Chevrolets to sort of spread their wings a little bit here when it comes to that straight line speed. They accolade they hold firmly over their rivals at Mercedes. Of course, it's a Chevy 1, 2, 3, so they will be fighting by looks of things among themselves, unless we can see one miracle charge from Zavala and that of Wishful Winnings. Following after then the run of Brundle and Nelson, the next overtaking opportunity would be a good exit from Murray's in the final corner of this circuit with a run along the Senna Straight, named after the late Ayrton Senna. And so taking a look across the field here, because there is that difference in tyre strategy. You can see from Carl Martel, he's on wets. With Andrew Veldkamp, those are dry tyres. Now, how you can tell, yellow lettering there from along the side. That's the Pirellis, the P0s, I believe they're using on these GT4s. And having a quick glance, because I am rather curious to see from that top 3, if we can go and locate the other Chevrolets at this time, the I believe the 119 and the 120. So we know that David Tanguay is opting for dry tyres. Christian Lebay looks to be going on dries as well. And I believe in behind them there, Vincent Simard may also be on those dry tyres. There are a few drivers then floating alternative strategies as we make our way down towards Coram. We can see here right now as it stands, Simard on dries, Zavala on dries. Is Winnings on dries? I don't believe so. So could be some drivers here with some definite struggles along the way coming in towards today's session. As there's a difference in tyre strategy, there could be a huge schism in the lead after the first quarter hour, as we are only a few minutes away from the start of rain today. But as we head down towards the line then for the start of Season 4 Round 8 here in the Snetterton Enduro for the Competizione Performance League GT4 Pro-Am Cup America Series powered by Malwar Transport, it's David Tanguay from the front lines, 22 cars in attendance, 21 on track and 1 from the pit lane. Down to the line we go here in Snetterton, 90 minutes ahead of us, an hour and a half at round 8 in our second and last visit to Great Britain this season. Without further ado, we are Green and Racing here in Snetterton, and a brilliant start from that front row. David Tanguay rockets away from Christian LeBay right on the start on the run in towards Ridges at turn 1. Great start from the 30, the 119 on close pursuit from behind. From behind them, the 120 falls into third place. We're trying currently to defend away from Adrian Zavala, who has a brilliant start as well. Down through to Montreal we go. Great from the number 30 at this time. The 119, though, you can see is on immediate pursuit because there is this great urgency for the first quarter hour before the rain arrives. But these drivers have to make the most of the distance they can hope to create now, as there will be a very busy pit lane coming up soon from now. Average stint time expected at around 30 minutes here. 2 mandatory pit stops over a 90-minute race. Leaves us currently 3 stints of 30 minutes in equal length. That's the average strategy. We could see a broadly different interpretation of the rules over the course of today's event, especially with halfway through that first stint being the introduction of rain. Taking a look out back here to see Carl Markle fighting with Wishful Winnings, and that does really spell all that you need to understand here on what their tyre choices were looking like, because that, as we now just get to see it from alongside the 99, these are 2 drivers running on the wet tyres, and the background was a great plume of smoke, and oh, contact side by side between Markle and Winnings as Winnings is in to the grass. We're taking a look at things here as they make their way up and around Williams. There was contact after this corner. We were looking to an incident out back, but there, a bit of a shoulder check from the 99. They have absolutely no grip to play with compared to the slick tyres in from behind them. So at this time, Carl Markle mans a top 5 spot. You will see from Matthew Szynoski, who gets the drop on Christian Boisvert. That's the rain. That's what they've been fearing. So this has worked wonderfully for Carl Markle. Strategy definitely on his side right now, because those wets are going to become a hell of a lot more useful in the next couple of laps, as we now see immediately the panic starting to dawn on our top 3. LeBay is hemorrhaging distance to Vincent Simard and is struggling to keep distance here with David Tanguay, who continues to rocket away with that race lead through Riches then after the first lap of racing. Meanwhile, for that of Adrian Zavala, holds his ground for the time being. I want to quickly glance in here with Matthew Szynoski, because you can see he's on the dry tyres. What of Boisvert, I wonder, because this could explain how he lost that lead so quickly in the AM division. As you can see, Isaac McMillan gets the jump onto him. He's also on the wet tyres. So Christian Boisvert and Carl Markle as the 2 furthest up the order to be taking wet tyres, along with what was briefly that of Wishful Winnings. You can now see tucked in behind that of Andrew Veldkamp, have got quite an interesting next chapter of the race to follow. It's greasy conditions, and I'm told the rain is only going to get worse in the next 15 minutes. So this first lap really was as good as it gets for the drivers grip-wise, at least for the foreseeable future. And the 119 still holding his distance from Vincent Simard, one that is, albeit slipping away from him here. These 3 caught out cold on those dry tyres. That's only going to get worse for them over the course of the next quarter hour. Can they hope to firm things for 26 minutes to stick to that 30-30-30 strategy? I really don't think that's going to be the case for them, because when it rains, it pours here in the UK. We don't do subtle rainfall, so this is quickly going to mount up to be a serious issue for our dry runners. And these 3, albeit the ones leading that charge, are not alone in that exemption. There will be many like them struggling in these trying conditions. Right now, these 3 in a world of their own. It is certainly a great showcase for the Malwar Racing team, but they have played a very risk strategy, one that they could stand to lose to one of their own, as Carl Markle, only 5th place at the moment, is the furthest up the order on wet tyres. Then Szynoski on the dries at this time. Risks losing position to Boisvert, but Boisvert has his own problems because right now he's trying to defend away from Let's Race mates Cedric Grenier-Massey. He's on dries, so Boisvert is going to continue to see struggles here in the same way that Martel is losing distance. You can see now being intercepted by Shinosky, but this will very quickly flip on its head. And this is going to allow him, as we see leaving the pit lane there. That was Casey Malz. As Shinosky, was that... Oh, that's a bit of... Look like intermittent internet troubles there for Shinosky. Don't tell me that's been a disconnect. You can see it's very likely to be one, because that's 669. All manner of haywire. Meanwhile, yellow flag's out. Number 61's in trouble. That is McMillan. In the grass, the yellow flags are out at turn 1. And that has been shock and upset there for Isaac McMillan, who's working his way up through the semi-pro order. He's washed out there from Riches. Really nowhere he can go, as we just see getting on past was Karina Stinson. And as we catch there, that's Boisvert into the wall, just as we go on board off the exit of Palmer. From one yellow into another here, from the withdrawal of the 61 now leaving the session behind. We caught immediately grief for the number 25 last rounds, one of 3 at least, race winner in division. Boisvert now met with immediate hardship. Off in the background, you could see as well, was the fight from the race lead. Lebay with the fastest lap at the moment, still on closing distance to David Tanguay. Vincent Simard nipping at his heels. These 3 in a world of their own fighting for the lead. But what is it going to be? A lead that they stand to hold for any much longer? Zavala outbuys Lonesome in the semi-pro lead at this time. Adam Jeffrey makes division 2nd. With Andrew Veldkamp in division 3rd. So Malwar Racing still trying to intercept Zavala. Clutch Power Racing. Dry tyres for Jeffrey. Dry for Veldkamp as well. It'll be possibly here Brad Peacock that could turn the tide if he is on the wet. As it would appear, he's on the dries as well. So who would be our first wet runner in the semi-pro order at this time? It's not going to be Ruben Pereira. So it's going to be a busy day in the pit lane for these semi-pros. Not a single one of them opted for wets at the start of today's event. We're back on with the lead at pro here. We see, at least from the rear of that 3-car fight, from Vincent Simard's point of view. Now we see here from the man in the middle, Christian Lebay, 3-time consecutive GT4 Pro-Am Cup America Series champion. Right now, championship lead up in pro, but he is struggling to get the leg up here on David Tanguay, who we have seen has been a very capable equal of his over the course of this season. We've seen others come through to challenge Lebay's otherwise indomitable stride in the pro division. Tanguay has been one of the more prevalent among them. We've also seen the resurgence of performance by Wishful Winnings a few seasons ago. There was the story of Giovanni Badiali challenging Lebay, also with Chevrolet at the time. And this is now, by looks of it, the possibility of seeing the scales turn in real time. Shinosky and Fisher, Florida Engineering, both in the pit lane. Shinosky's on exit. I don't believe he took any kind of fuel. And oh, was that a disconnect? Yes, it was. Matthew Shinosky, by the looks of it, is out of this race. Now marks our 2nd DNF after Isaac McMillan. We're from 22 to 20 cars left in today's race. Among the nearest fights outside of the top 3 is Veldkamp v Jeffrey for the podium positions in semi-pro. So really, wherever which we look here, it's going to be fighting from inside the confines of the Malwar Racing team's ranks. Whether it's pro or semi-pro, it's as far down as 12th place we have to look to see any kind of fights between Wishful Winnings, Dylan Vekere and Ruben Pereira. Rejoining the session appears to be Matthew Shinosky, confirming our suspicions of a disconnect. Off in the background in front is Cedric Grenier-Massey. That allows Didier Potvin through to the AM Division lead. As it was heartbreak and upset for Christian Boisvert. You can see the aftermath of the damages he suffered off the exit of Palmer, as he now marks Division 5th and 18th overall after his spin. Cedric Grenier-Massey recently displaced then from the race lead in the AM Division. It's Didier Potvin to lead that charge, and more trouble from behind. It's the 96 now in trouble. I believe that being for, yes, Casey Malz of Team Raceline Sim Aston Martin. Looking up the order here to see very recent development of action as we go to catch back on board with David Tanguay and Christian Lebay. The battle at the head of the field on board to the 119. We mentioned it in the discussion surrounding the hardships faced by... Oh, just a moment here. Big slide. Can he hold it? Yes, he can. What a slide that's come to be, albeit quite a heart in the throat moment there for the number 30. As we continue to watch them now, packed in like sardines in this top three as they make their way through Williams. Look at this slide at Hamilton by David Tangway to hold this control of that machine. He's done that in a very fortunate spot because it narrows up into Oggies. What otherwise represents a good overtaking opportunity was one that he made himself as wide as possible for. So inadvertently, that oversteer has helped him quite a great heap. Back onto this discussion here. We mentioned it first in the conversation surrounding the hardships faced by one of the AM drivers, Karina Stinson, in coming to wrestle the Maserati, a car profoundly known for having no ABS or traction control in GT4, and trying to corral that to form in wet conditions. Now, while these Chevrolets do have ABS and do have TC, it is only really the suggestion of ABS and TC that exists on these Chevys in the wet, because these can be quite a rowdy bunch, and that might be the explaining reason behind why they needed such a drastic reduction in weight to continue to be as competitive. Frankly, I don't think they needed the hand-holding at this time. You can see they are quite a spry assortment, those Camaros, and if you go and catch on board with the actual onboard view here from Le Bay, I think there's a pretty sizable, perhaps 6.2 litre in displacement elephant in the room, being the fact these Chevy drivers can barely see where they're going. So that even more so makes it quite respectable that they're able to do what they're able to do. They're wrestling a 6.2 litre mammoth of an engine, the LT1 unit from the Camaro SS. They are quite on the hefty side in terms of weight distribution. They were not designed for GT4 racing in the slightest, but they made their way through the absolute mad science from Pratt Miller Engineering as it's contact between Le Bay and Tangway at Agostini. He went for quite the long distance lead there, but he, I think, realised right as he got onto the brakes that he hasn't the stopping power he did in dry. And moreover, at the same time was an incident for a driver down off the exit of Riches. Right along that same time, it was, I believe, there as we just see, was trouble for the number 8, Ruben Pereira, if I'm not mistaken, and the 27 at that matter as well. Well, Le Bay's fight for first is well and truly over, but Vincent Simard has now reaped the reward by taking the lead of this race over David Tangway. Adrian Zavala still holds semi-pro's lead. Carl Martel is still in 5th in what is looking to be improving conditions for his tyres. He'll be soon clawing that distance back in on Zavala, but is this a gamble perhaps made in vain here when it comes to the fact that, while yes, it has been the smarter decision to make to go onto those wet tyres as early as possible, has the distance formed up by the rest of the dry runners been too great to bear in this opening stint? Strategy could still favour them by the end of this race. We see here with Wishful Winnings, one of those early wet runners, now fighting with Curtis Belbray. Now, he's been able to make his way back up through the order, so to speak, here, as he has fallen a fair few down in that opening skirmish, where the dries were the preferable option. It was a huge risk taken by the wet runners. Winnings now up and ahead, but you can see big step of oversteer on the same curb he's been struggling with for some time. Just before turn 10 here, so we see from behind as well, with Curtis Belbray being intercepted by Clinton Bourne. Got to say hats off here to Bourne, because he did start from the back. He was disqualified for driving in the opposite direction following an incident for him during quali, and he has turned that one around into 13th place so far from a 22-car grid. Now 21, as we do note the return of Matthew Shinosky. David Tangway 9/10 away from Vincent Simard following their skirmish with Christian Le Bay down at this corner here at Agostini. Coming up into the first 15 minutes of today's race, things are starting to simmer at the front. They try to get the very last of the ability out of those dries. You can see again into Hamilton is such a sketchy zone here for that number 30, the 120. I can only imagine what's going on in the mind at the moment of Vincent Simard. You can see the car, it's so uneasy, it's fidgeting through every corner, scraping and squeezing the last of its ability in terms of grip to try and stay in control, and that is going to be a fate met by many on today's grid. We do note for Curtis Belbray, having now fallen in behind Clinton Bourne, he's got Ruben Pereira parked on his bumper now. Looking way out back here, Boisvert v Jeffrey at this time. 17th place up for grabs. Of course, has been a very, very unfortunate start to racing by Christian Boisvert. Was turned into the wall after Palmer at turn 3. You see here in Montreal, runs deep into that corner. With Jeffrey on his tail, Boisvert tries to close distance onto Karina Stinson of Maserati, and we see their difference in braking distance between Jeffrey and Boisvert. Boisvert onto the grass. Jeffrey runs on through. I'm quite surprised here that Stinson has been able to hold on to that car for as long as she has, because that Maserati has fought her in every condition bar this one. You can also get the understanding as well, given the fact that she is carrying the burden tenfold over the rest of GT4 by not having any of the creature comforts modern GT4 comprises, that she is facing off a battle of her own. Albeit having lost position out to Boisvert and Jeffrey, had she pushed a single percentile ahead of the limit she finds herself at, that car's going into the grass. That Maserati is a machine of pure spite. Into the pit lane comes that of Clinton Bourne. Solid opening stint for the Aussie talent. And we do note the pit window is now open within the first 15 minutes. Will close when it's 15 minutes left to go. So he's played this one very close to the belt. Following him in, Brad Peacock. So the first 15 minutes underway. We are now firmly in wet conditions. And these have been the conditions now having to be faced off against by the leading trio of Chevrolets, along with several of these dry runners today. Knowing this would be a commitment they'd have to hold on to for at least 15 minutes, we could see plenty of them shake their faith now, as already 2 in the pit lane with Bourne and Peacock. Now, it's only fuel on the mandate at this time. It will, I believe, be a little extra time if they are to swap tyres, but this is something they must absolutely do. As we see they're swapping onto the wets goes Clinton Bourne. Will we see the same there of Brad Peacock? Being the next question in our line of thinking. Karina Stinson is now into the pit lane, we're told. And she was able to do all of that on dries. Hats off. Onto the wets then goes Brad Peacock. Andrew Veldkamp's on closing distance to Karl Martel. Now, that is a curiosity when you consider one's on the dries here, being the 616, the other's on the wets, being the 99. The exit of Nelson. Behind them is Dylan Vekere. No news yet from the top 3. Simard stays out, Tanguay stays out, and Labay stays out. Zavala looks to stay out as well. Still feels confident on these tyres. Martel won't have to come in, as he's on wets already. We'll be looking at gun things for another at least 13 minutes before his next pit stop, which will be his first of 2 today. What a Veldkamp, though. He feels as if he's on closing distance, but what will be the decision met by the 616 as we head into the pit lane entry? Makes his way past, yet to have come in. 35 stays out. Grenier Massey into the pit lane in the 626. Staying out as well is the Jackal from behind them. Wishful Winnings already on the wets like Martel, so doesn't have to come in. Won't need to come in, at least for a while. And recently in there, Ruben Pereira, after some trouble at the start of the race, had to dodge out of the way of the number 27 of Brad Peacock. Now finds himself several positions down the order, both in division and overall. Meanwhile, looking back up at the front of the field, Christian Labay is now 5.8 seconds from David Tanguay, so he is slowly chipping distance here, but I think it might be something that starts to plateau very quickly. We do note the emergence of a brand new fight, Martel, Veldkamp and Vekere. So let's get a catch on board with these 3 as they now contest position. Way out wide, there goes Veldkamp. So Vekere slips on through into 6th. Watching here from Andrew Veldkamp's point of view, you can hear it in the engine revs that he's having to fight that engine for everything it's got to not spin the car out. Currently then, it's an outright fight for 5th. Vekere looks poised to try and gun for a position off of Karl Martel. So let's go to catch on board with Karl Martel's point of view of things. As on the inside of him, as you can see there, just emerging is the white and teal of the 161 Motorsports Mercedes of Dylan Vekere. Great double overtake by Vekere, but it's worth noting it looks like he's on those dry tyres. And while the Chevrolet claws distance back in on him, as we're now on board to Karl Martel as he contests a 5th place spot, one that he previously held a few corners ago, now looks to relinquish that command off to Vekere off the exit of Nelson. Again, the top 3 yet to have come to the pit lane. It's unlikely they will. What of Zavala? He stays out, so next consideration stand around Karl Martel, that being Vekere and Veldkamp, but given the very spry approach to things there by Dylan Vekere, I'd be surprised if he comes in. Conditions are not great, and they're not going to get any better If anything, they stand to get worse over the course of today's event, but Martel's coming in. What is Karl Martel up to then? A curious development when one considers that Karl Martel started today on the wets and stood ample ground if he held out another 11 minutes to move up into that top 5. What on earth has gone on there? It's worth noting as well, yellow flags were out for the number 25, and that again is hardship in the first and second sector for Christian Boisvert. It has been quite a nightmare scenario here for Boisvert, and I believe, having a look here with the back end of his Chevrolet, was looking rather low in the grass. I'll see whether or not, as he comes onto the road, is that the standard height for that rear axle, or could there be some trouble with the suspension? You can see how snaky the back end of the car is at this time. Right now, it is sitting ever so slightly lower, but not one that would suggest immediately a puncture. Of course, he'd be going significantly slower were that the case. Karl Martel now leaves the pit lane. Also into the pits at the time was Curtis Belbray in the 15. And looks to be swapping off of those dries. It's worth noting rain set to continue to pick up for the next 15 minutes. So at least the first 30 minutes of today's race is in full wet conditions. Right now, track conditions still registers damp. So drivers, though incredibly risky, can still consider options to those dry tyres. But we're seeing here trouble for David Tanguay out wide at Murray's. Could that be the requiem now that brings him to the pit lane? No. You've got to appreciate the resilience here on Tanguay. I would have brought the car into the pit lane in his position. 119 stays out. Zavala would be next on consideration. You can see there the yellow walling on his tyres means he's on the dries. When that walling disappears, that does mean they're on the wets, as we saw for Karl Martel. Staying out also then is Zavala. They're clearly willing to toe the line for as long as those wets are not the optimal option. We are now down to 19 cars. It is a rather fearsome position we see at this time here in Snetterton, and our escapades in wet racing do not cease this week. We are told right now through the grapevine of rumours of wet conditions on the way to Season 7 Round 2 of the NLRL Sunday League. We got live with the opening round at the Misano World Circuit last Sunday. It was a brilliant opener, double win for Carlos Disch, and the introduction of the Pro and Am Championships with 2 new winners down in the AMs. We'll get on into that on our coverage of Round 2 this Sunday, 6:30 p.m. BST, as we go live from the Mount Panorama Circuit, New South Wales, Australia. The first time, possibly ever, we'll see wet conditions play out in Bathurst. A very troubling sign, as Bathurst already this week has given us quite a lot of action from Fats GT in dry conditions, I should mind. Wet conditions definitely do seem to be a big fear at this time. And this is a reality faced by the drivers right now here in Snetterton as they fend off against continuously wettening conditions. Off there in the background, that's Pereira. As we just see there from the leading trio, Chevrolet still commanding the podiums here in Pro and overall as it stands at the moment. Tanguay having a dive out of the way of Ruben Pereira. Matthew Shanowski reconnects for the second time there, confirming another disconnect for the 669 Florida Engineering Mercedes. Vincent Simard leading that charge, does not yet consider options to the pit lane, though certainly floated the idea. The number 30 doesn't yet consider options. Will the 119 think of options yet? No. 46 would be next on considerations. Closest battle at this time. Bourne versus Grenier Massey. Bourne, as it would appear, does appear to be now on those wet tyres. So we saw a great opening stint here from the number 6, having come from the back into right about where he stands actually now here in 13th place. It's worth noting, while he swapped the tyres, he didn't fulfill the requirements of the pit stop. So he still has 2 to serve. And strategy has been a real biting point here for Bourne over the last couple of races. He's had the pace for it. He's had the ability, but it's often been bad luck, being in the wrong place at the wrong time, penalties, or strategy that has been his main Achilles. You see there, running slow out from Hamilton was the number 626. So from around the outside, Bourne has a chance here. Out from Oggies in towards Williams, narrowly skating that outside line. He's got to be careful to not catch the grass off the exit here of Williams. Onto the Bentley straight, now up and ahead. Meanwhile, in the pit lane is Didier Potvin, so leader of the AM division after the opening nearly 30 minutes of racing here. Roughly about 24 minutes in at the moment. It leaves Cedric Grenier-Massey having recently dropped to 13th within a shot here. As we do take a look, he has served the first of his 2 mandatory pit stops. So he has played an early strategy in towards today's event, and taking a look at the tyres as he scoots on past through turn 10. He's on wets. And, what's gone on here, folks? We'll be back to you in a moment. Apologies there for the interruption. Not quite sure what's gone on, but we were disconnected from the server. Fortunately, nothing critical. We're back in here. Still an hour and 5 minutes left to go. Currently then developments from the front lines as the top 5 remain where they stand. Recently then into the pit lane appears to be Joey Fisher, and that reconnect from Matthew Shinosky. So it seems the case there that Shinosky is not the only one struggling today with connection troubles. Now, we did note the difference in strategy just before our interruption for Potvin v Grenier Massey, and now this is a very curious one, because having served his first mandatory pit stop of 2 today, I should remind, he's come back on with dry tyres in conditions that will very soon not favour them at all. We see already many of the dry runners are skating their way along this track, losing time. Cedric Grenier Massey could be within a stab here of another division win. I believe the first time since last season for him. It's worth noting, Grenier Massey has now, by looks of it, I'm not sure whether or not this has been a case where, if we can go get our control template here. Oh no, so that is trouble. Our reconnect makes it to where we now no longer know what tyres they're on. So if we can go to catch on board here with Wishful Winnings, he's not coming to the pit lane to change his tyres just yet. He's in 8th place. Started this on the wets, but as you can see now, following our reconnect, those are yellow walls on the tyres. It means he's technically on the dries from our point of view. So that is really unfortunate that that disconnect has happened when it did, because it has now completely confounded our understanding of what the tyre strategy is like for these drivers. Well, there's not really a great deal we can do from there, and we'll just have to see whether or not that updates itself over the course of the race. But what we do understand is that these three, the leading trio of Chevrolets, are still on dries, as far as we are led to understand. Neither of these three yet having come to the pit lane. It doesn't look like they'll be following on that trend anytime soon. Next 15 minutes still assuring us then of continued rainfall in mixed conditions here at Snetterton. Adrian Zavala stays out. Dylan Vekere will be next under the scalpel here from the top 5. It's worth noting that Karl Martel has served his first of 2 mandatory pit stops. He's played this very curiously. You see the 2 Florid engineering cars of Shinosky and Fisher backed up behind Wishful Winnings. No dice on a run to the pits for Zavala or for Vekere, or for the Jackal, now in 6th place, or for Veldkamp, now in 7th, Wishful Winnings. Is there the consideration of a 30-30-30 strategy? The 23 runs wide at Murray's. Could this be that beckoning call into the pit lane? No, as it stands. A lot of drivers abstinent to come into the pit lane then, as it would appear, though many having already served their first mandatory, the first up the order of them being Karl Martel, as he makes his way up past Karina Stinson, who's also served their first mandatory pit stop of 2 today. And it wouldn't be a GT4 Pro-Am Cup America stream if we didn't have a random disconnect halfway through. The connection has always been a little bit spotty. That has really been quite a thorn in the side, because it's not been the kind of disconnect that takes everybody out and maybe forces us into a week-long delay like it did in Alton Park. This is a case where we've come back in, and a very crucial part of our analysis is now blind. I never thought that was a thing, but you know, you learn something every day now. If you do disconnect halfway through in a Assetto Corsa Competizione race, it will reset what the tyres are from only your perspective. We've seen it before with drivers having connection trouble, and it resets the lights in night races, but this takes the cake, because that is incredibly irritating for all of the worst possible reasons. David Tanguay into the pit lane. The first of that top 3 to come in then, so he's playing the earlier strategy over his compatriots. Simard still leading that charge. You can see him, though, incredibly wide at Montreal. Meanwhile, hang on just a tick here. There has been trouble for the, I want to say that is the number 59, not the 99. That has been for Joey Fisher. Just between Oggies and Williams as he's onto the Bentley straight. Also in the pits now is Christian Boisvier. Was a very troubled start to the race here for Boisvier as he's now in. Becquerel stays out. The Jackal would be next in consideration, but he stays out also. Andrew Veldkamp next under consideration. And it looks like third time's the charm because Veldkamp is in. 616 now into the pit lane. Nearest will be the 669. That will be Matthew Shinosky, but having just reconnected to the session, it's unlikely he'll be into the pits anytime soon unless he disconnects again. Wishful Winnings makes his way from Murray's on two wheels. Stays out. We're going to catch on board with that leading Ford at this time. We do just quickly see here, actually caught between the two. Did I say leading Fords? Leading Chevrolets at this time. Caught between them was the BMW of Cedric Grenier-Massey. You see from Vincent Simard leading the charge here for Chevrolet. Currently they're in our race lead in both overall and the Pro division. Simard stays out. Will that be the same tune kept by the 119? Yes, that is. Christian Labbe with the fastest lap so far, 158.520. And that's unlikely that anyone's going to come along and change that anytime soon. 59 minutes left to go, so we're out past the first 30 minutes of racing today here in Snetterton. And the most recent moves to the pit lane have been for Joey Fisher now on exit, Clinton Bourne now on entrance, and Adam Jeffrey also on entrance. Just coming in there from in the background, that I believe is Ruben Pereira. Yes, it is, in the number 8 car. Number 46 elects to stay out. That's Adrian Zavala making his way on past, lapping these drivers from the semi-pro division lead. So as it stands right now, before their tenure in the pits, it's Simard from Labbe, Zavala, Vekere and Jackal in the top 5. Tanguay, Winnings, Martel, Veldkamp and Potvin for the top 10. Division leaders then in the pros is Simard, and the semi-pros is Adrian Zavala on your screen to the moment. In the AMs is Didier Potvin. Much to the dismay of Christian Boisvier, who had a solid qualifying session down in the AM division. It has all come massively undone here for the 25. We saw exactly where that started for him. It has been quite a lot of struggle for him in today's event. Adam Jeffrey being intercepted by Clinton Bourne following their first official mandatory pit stop, technically their second of today's event. We saw them into the pits very early on as the pit window opened. See from Labbe getting up past that of Karina Stinson. Let's go to catch on board though with that number 6, because it is a rather curious angle to see here from Bourne, who's been tirelessly working his way up through the order here, battling against strategy and against his own machine, as we can see off the exit of Williams. Battling for 14th place at this time. No information from the pit lane. Currently no entries at this time, but that could still change on the turn overhead. Up through Brundle and Nelson, Jeffrey in sight. We do note a sizable portion of cars making their way up off the exit of Murray's. We see here from Curtis Bell Bray, Brad Peacock and Joey Fisher with the two in front of him at that time. Looking in here once again with Clinton Bourne up and along the exit of turn 10, in through Coram, now at Murray's, gets the move on Jeffrey. Oh, but a slit there for the number 6, immediately undoes all of the progress made on the run through those last two corners. We are told in the pit lane at this time, I believe is Adrian Zavala, the number 46, is now into the pit lane. That's your semi-pro leader, as we just saw there, big slip for Clinton Bourne. Looking here with Adam Jeffrey, who having regained the ground from Bourne. Now puts 1.1 seconds on the Australian talent behind him as we head in through to Montreal. Now taking a look at that pit lane run for the 46. It does allow the Jackal into the lead now for the time being. Adrian Zavala, yet to have dropped from his jacks, is likely to come on to those wet tyres. He was one of a number of dry starters as the entire semi-pro division started on the dry tyres in that opening 15-minute skirmish. Wishful Winnings now looking to get up into 6th place ahead of Zavala. Carl Martel would be next on closing range, but we see that Zavala's off the jacks and on his way out. And in the background, that white and black number 99, that being Carl Martel. As you now see here from Adrian Zavala, that is now, I think, yes, we do have to wait for a bit of a clean slate here, because now on those wets, as we can now see the lack of lettering there on the side of his tyres, is Adrian Zavala. So finally succumbing to the grasp of the wet tyres as conditions rapidly approach a formal wet classification. In the developments surrounding Jeffrey and Bourne, Adam Jeffrey now in behind. We see for Bourne, this could be a slippery area for him. We do see him just duck off of that curb. Through turn 10 into turn 11 here. The run at Coram. Bourne holds his ground. This was the corner that caught him out a moment ago. He's up on 2 wheels. He's definitely done that before. I believe he, along with the rest of us, still have those stark memories of the Circuit de Barcelona-Catalunya incident last season. I don't believe I've ever seen a GT4 do what his has done. That's broadly redefining what the sport's capable of there. But not for how impressive they stand as circuit races. I'd say there's a pretty solid career coming for some of these GT4s in Rocket League. But that ever a real classification for them to fight in. LeBay looking to lap out past Andrew Veldkamp by looks of things there. That's the 616 fording on past the 119. In terms of the nearest fight right now, Curtis Belbray becomes the latest on the list of acquisitions for position there by Clinton Bourne as he falls victim of a big slip there at Palmer. That does back him right onto the nose of the 42. We're told Wishful Winnings is now latest into the pit lane as he comes to a stop in front of our eyes here. Now, Winnings, I was told originally was one of the wet runners. You can see after our disconnect there, it does show that he's on the dries. Now, I believe as he comes out of the pits, that will refresh to show him on wet tyres. 53 minutes left to go. And Simard is in as well. So recent developments from the front lines. And that follows with him there, Christian LeBay into the pit lane. Will Vekere follow in their footsteps, though, being the real question? We are told as well the 669 has reconnected once more for Shinosky, and you've got to appreciate the resilience here, but I think the writing may very well be on the wall for the Florida Engineering 669. We hear the sound of that 4-litre bi-turbo V8 firing up, so Winnings is on his way out. As we saw there, coming to a stop was the Chevrolet of Christian LeBay. Winnings now back out on track. The 23 rounds up through Rich's corner. They're on lap 17 on the wet tyres. So past the first 30 minutes of racing, it's a very lively view from the pit lane here with more and more entrants in. We just see then leaving is Vincent Simard, dropping from the jacks a moment ago was the 119. This is going to be a vital part of the race here for Vincent Simard if he means to claim on a victory this season. And taking a look back through those previous wins, he's currently looking through it, yet to have seen one here in Season 4. .119, about a corner away here as he makes his way through Montreal. The nearest threat to Vincent Simard's lead of this race is this one here, the number 30 of David Tanguay. Right now, both of them fall victim to the strategy of Dylan Vekere. We know he'll come in. That is an inevitability. That is an inadmissible rule of nature. He is going to have to come in at some point. Those dries will not hold for as long as he hopes. And this could be among the last laps we see from Vekere's first stint. He has done very, very well in that 161, but this is the provisional lead raging on from behind him here between Simard and Tanguay off the exit of Williams. And with nothing left to stand in their way, they've got a clear line of sight on the 161. They're both, as it stands here, I believe on the wet tyres. Simard came in before our disconnect, if I'm not mistaken, so that shows why he's still on the dries. You can see, though, on the wets, there is David Tanguay. He's not wasted any time in that one. Actually, no, hang on. Vincent Simard was in front of our very eyes. So he is on dry tyres. Or if he's not, he's on the same wets from before our disconnect. No, because this is his first pit stop. So no, he is on dries. There's either been a glitch there or he's forgotten to change the tyres. Either which more bizarre than the last, because you can see for the 120, he's holding, I would say, pretty decent ground here on Tanguay. But you can see the 30 already has the scent of blood in the water. And he's on closing distance as Vekere now peels into the pit lane, leaving us now with the prospect of the leading fight at hand. So going to catch on with the intercepting car with the number 30 of David Tanguay. He's hungry for victory here today. Last victory was 2 rounds ago at round 6 of the championship. So this would be an albeit very brief jaunt away from winning form after Alton Park, but one that gets him right back on to the run of things here in Snetterton. David Tanguay fighting the lead then from Vincent Simard. See there from the 120, he's getting very, very loose down through Hamilton. Now Oggies into Williams, dipping 2 wheels on the grass there. Tanguay, I don't believe he was expecting to do that, but he did end up facing down the possibility of a big spin. He's come away quite lucky to still hold within a second's worth of distance here on Simard. We'll catch on to these two in a moment's time. Let's take a look down through the order to see where the next nearest fight could be coming from. There is still the anticipation of a fight here between Bourne and Belbray, but Bourne already having put a car between the two, being by looks of it there, that looks at the 999, one of the last late runners here on that first stint for the Jackal of Breaking Point Racing, and rather ironically misses the breaking point into Brundle and Nelson, and following him is his teammate at Breaking Point Racing, Curtis Belbray. That's not what you want, is it? Wet conditions means considerably longer braking zones. It looked a bit far-fetched from this distance, and 999 just couldn't get the car slowed down. Now, we watched some onboard testing from an associate of ours before today's broadcast, and as it comes to be the case in the first interpretations of the Chevrolet, those brakes are, how do we say, not good. Not grand. And the Jackal now into the pit lane, rather unsurprisingly, following that blunder at Brundle and Nelson. Nearest fight right now outside of the race lead, as we see there now taking lead is David Tanguay on Vincent Simard. Would have been the fight for Potvin v Veldkamp at this time, as we see down through past Palmer. So getting that move in was at Montreal for David Tanguay. So you now see he's moved up, I should say, into the lead of this race. And that does confirm our suspicions of the 120 having stayed on dry tyres. That is a very bizarre decision. I don't believe one made voluntarily, if that is the case, by Vincent Simard. I think that may have been a bit of a cock-up in the pit lane, and he's having to sort of just deal with it until his next pit stop. Right now, though, he's going to hemorrhage more time than he'll ever stand to gain in the third stint, so I think it might be a case where sooner rather than later, if he is not on those wets. Of course, we are having to deal with that interference from earlier. That disconnect did leave us with a limited understanding of what the tyre compounds were still looking like, because it did reset all of them across all cars following our reconnect to the session. But we do understand that before that point, we had seen Vincent Simard into the pit lane where he did not collect on, by looks of it, those wet tyres. Out in front, you can see Tanguay trying to get his way up past Brad Peacock. And this could create an opening for Simard. If what we're seeing is to be believed at this time, that is quite a grim turn in today's event for him. We see side-by-side action between Vekere and Zavala now. This is quite a spectacle to see. Let's go on board to the Mercedes cars, who now take battle as we see trouble there for Curtis Belbray. Watching with Adrian Zavala. As alongside him, a little difficult to see from the onboards there, is Dylan Vekere trying to go the long way around at Brundle. Both of them make contact. And at Nelson, cutting across, goes the 46 of Adrian Zavala. Another replay down to this section, then. This area is becoming a little too common for troubles here in a wet Snetterton. Trying to go for the long distance, made contact with the 46, who, much like what we saw for the Jackal, was going rather exuberantly late on the brakes. One that I don't believe was a distance he ever hoped he was going to make. And that is often something these drivers tend to forget in wet racing. Because you're so lasered in on trying to keep the car from spinning, you do tend to forget that that grip still works the long way, and trying to get the car slowed down is equally as hard as trying to get the car to rotate. In the background, that was going slow for the, I believe that was the 25, yes, allowing the 999 on through. So what was going on there for Christian Boisvert being the real question. We see from Christian Lebay in third, going to locate the 25, and there we do see from Boisvert, he's 17 for this time. Going to look back in with the lead of this race. It's 1.5 seconds now for David Tanguay.
We are halfway through, not over yet.
As you heard it there, halfway on round 8. It's Chevrolet still in a 1-2-3 formation at this time. David Tanguay leads over Vincent Simard and Christian Lebay in third. Dylan Vekere in fourth. Adrian Zavala rounds out the top 5 whilst heading up the semi-pro field in the 46. Now, as it stands for Zavala, if we take a look back again at those previous wins of the season, this looks to be 4 in a row if he's able to hold it for today's event, following a triple header, a hat-trick of victories, so to speak, in Alton Park last week in the drier conditions and another fellow MSV circuit. From behind him then, Carl Martel in 6th, Jackal in 7th. Heading up the Anfield then is Didier Potvin for Aston Martin and Maloir Racing. He's 8th place, 9th place for Andrew Velkamp, and Wishful Winnings rounds out the top 10. From 11th then down to the remaining 19th position, we have Cedric Grenier-Massey, Brad Peacock, Clinton Bourne, Curtis Belbray, Ruben Pereira, Adam Jeffrey, Christian Boisvert, Karina Stinson, and Joey Fisher. It's a brutal standing at the moment then. We started with 22 cars, 3 of which no longer with us, down to 19 vehicles, just past the halfway. Nearest fight right now is Veldkamp v Winnings, one that appears to have wrapped itself up as quickly as it started, with Winnings getting the leg up into 9th. Now, while the chance remained for a time there for Simard to fight with David Tanguay, it seems that the fears of him maybe accidentally putting on those dry tyres may be soon realised. As you can see, those yellow wall tyres still very much so on the Chevrolet. Now, I have a multitude of theories around it because, of course, we did see him into the pits not too long ago. I think right now, as it stands, that could very likely still be on those dry tyres. It is quite a surprise then in these conditions. He is still holding up as well as he is. But you can see he's losing buckets of time to Christian Lebay, who, as we take a glance on with the 119 as he makes his way towards Bomb Hole Corner at turn 10, we'll see, is it rather, yes, indicatively on the, not the dry, sorry, the wet tyres. Going to catch with the 119 because he is on closing distance to intercept Vincent Simard. Lebay's on for second. Let's see it off the exit of Murray's. You can see super slippery exit there as he gets onto the runoff curb. The 120 stays out as we saw into the pit lane alongside them a moment ago with Cedric Grenier-Massey of Let's Race Mate BMW, going 12 minutes behind the expected 30-minute pit window. Lebay from the long distance there up and around the outside. We take a look then on the replays at Rich's corner. By the books approach there by Lebay. He had the run on towards Vincent Simard. You can see already was getting up and ahead of him, and just enough of room there for him to swing back onto that racing line. Up and around Rich's corner. Solid overtake indeed by the 3-time champion. And that's just 3 times here on Competizione Performance League. I'd like to point out as well, he also holds GT4 accolades elsewhere. The GT4 Challenge by HCCL. He also took the championship in that season, I believe 2 of the multi-class championship. Took the GT4 championship in that as well. To our understanding, that's as far as our knowledge extends. Also multiple time world record holder. I mean, it really did seem written in the stars that of any classification he was going to come on and dominate, it was going to be GT4. There was just so much more potency on that side of things. Our first ever encounter with Christian Labey was in GT3 in the opening rounds of the first ever races, now some 77 races ago, of the NLRL Sunday League. In our first round at Misano, Season 1, Round 1, in which we got to see Labey, at the time driving unaffiliated to the Maloir Racing team. This was long before the team's inception. He was driving by his lonesome in the 119 Aston Martin V12 Vantage. He would go on to take the championship in Season 1 of the Sunday League. And that was our first ever encounter with this driver before moving in with his operation at the Competizione Performance League for the GT4 Pro-Am Cup America Series, the first round ever of this series with that Laguna Seca. The rest has been history then. 3 championships later, the 4th possibly on its way. Seems unstoppable for the 119, and he's made the most of a bad situation because he has now elevated what was that fight for second a while back there with Vincent Simard to the possibility to intercept first. He was 2 seconds nearly there faster in the last lap gone to David Tanguay. He seems then definitely focused on the prowl for the chances of another race win. Of course, took 2 in the last round. Oh, hang on just a moment. The 59. That was, I believe, was the 59. That was Joey Fisher, if I'm not mistaken. Now, sadly, out of this event. And there is also trouble here for Ruben Pereira. The yellow flags are out off the exit of Williams. He's now able to clear himself of the road, but will he be able to get himself back towards the pit lane? You can see likelihood there of steering damage. Some horrific incident for him there. And we do note as well for the 59 was between Bombhole Corner and Coram, between turns 10 and 11. The likelihood being the case, as we just see here with the 999 of the Jackal. This would have been the area where he would have slipped up at, was on the curb off the exit of turn 10, where he would have likely spun into the grass. And as we saw from Isaac McMillan earlier in this race, once you're on the grass, there's really little to help you at all in getting off of it. Back onto the 119 as we take a look back in on the ongoing fight for the race lead. We watch here from Labey's point of view, but getting a quick glance in from the defending angle. On with the current race leader, David Tanguay. You can see there from the onboard, watch here with Tanguay as he wrestles control of that Chevrolet. The amount of corrections here to corral this monstrous machine to form. We're trying to get a catch on board as well later on in this race when we get the opportunity with Karina Stinson, because I'm really curious to see. These are the corrections going on in the Chevrolet, the possibly most dominant car in GT4 here on Assetto Corsa Competizione console. I would say that quite confidently, considering this car has dominated almost every track record. Tanguay continues to wrestle that steering wheel like it owes him rent money. Labey is closing in hot in the spray now generated by the number 30. This wasn't a concern when the rain started, but it is a concern that persists for now. Is into Montreal on the inside, looking to return to their fight for the first time since the start of the race. David Tanguay falters there at Montreal, and Labey now into the lead. One fell swoop at Montreal. That was solidified by that slip just off the exit of that corner. We see there already ahead at the apex, then just clips over the curbs. That snatches the inside of the car away from Tanguay. Labey now into the lead as we make our way through Agostini, where these two got into arms in the opening laps of this race. Now it's the 119 in the lead. In terms of where the nearest fight comes from now, it looks to be on 11th place's doorstep. Brad Peacock versus Clinton Bourne, but it's going to be difficult for Peacock to keep up with Bourne, as he has really been charging his way up through the order then. I mean, now put some 2.9 seconds on the Aston Martin, down in 12th. It looks to be the case coming forward here for Labey. Now, it is worth noting, we're about 6 minutes out on that next expected run to the pits for the remainder of these drivers. Now, there are 3 of which that have, right now, as we see, taken their second and final mandatory pit stop. We saw very deep on the brakes on the run in through. to Brundle and Nelson there for Tanguay. We see now leaving that section here is Vincent Simard. Caught in between them, I believe, there is the 616 of Andrew Veldkamp in 10th place. East Division 3rd and on for a podium finish in the semi-pros. We see, though, it's not so easy here for the 616 running wide at Coram. Didier Potvin, I mean, this is proper masterclass we're seeing from Aston Martin. They have dominated the AM category in lieu of what was previously a championship lead by Alpine and Breaking Point Racing's Brandon Carr. For one reason or another, Carr no longer with us for the rest of this championship, leaves the throne vacant for this one to inherit. You can see it has not been idly taken by Didier Potvin. He has been in a firm pursuit of that lead for some time, where in the case of the Alpine could still join us today, I had pretty sizable authority in assuming the 35 would be chasing it, if not ahead. It has been a continuous stride forward then by Potvin over the course of this season, and I would say, especially after Alton Park, where he fought through hell and high water. I suppose more just hell and back, as high water is right here in Snetterton, to come away with 2 more victories at this time. He has done remarkably well. Right now, it does make for a rather unique state of affairs, because in the Drivers' Championship, Chevrolet lead the charge, courtesy of Christian Lepay. In the semi-pros, it's Mercedes, courtesy of Adrian Zavala, and now, as of last round, it's Didier Potvin leading the charge for Aston Martin in AM. So, despite the fact that Chevrolet is dominant, they are dominant in the top level of the series. Right now, their main gripe in the lower divisions is just lack of numbers when it comes to Chevys in the lower divisions. Now, we do have a number of them with us today. The Jackal in Division 2nd for Chevrolet in the semi-pros. Down in the AMs, of course, we did note a division pole at the time for Christian Boisvert, but that's come down by the wayside as many of the lower division Chevrolets have started to struggle. And I think this does come down to what is the sort of secret recipe behind Chevrolet's success, and has been largely in part due to the mad science conducted at Maloir Racing to really get these cars to perform to standard. They have worked tirelessly around this machine. You can see a lot of this guidance came from within at Maloir Racing. Lepay has done a lot of homework with this car, and you can possibly get the understanding, like with any sim racing team, they're sharing information with one another, and whenever they find a new development in the 119, that gets reflected out to the 30, that gets reflected out to the 120 and to the 99. Whatever benefit they gain as a group, and it's why Maloir Racing has dominated Pro this season. It's why they stand for some 400 points or so in the lead at the Pro Teams Championship. It's why Lepay's had 3 championships under his belt. There is no one machine on this grid he understands more than the Camaro. In the pit lane at the moment is Didier Potvin, and now this is the real threat for him, is Cedric Grenier-Massey. He did take a win in the closing parts, if I'm not mistaken, of last season at Season 3 of the Championship. With Potvin already on exit, those fears quickly quelled as he makes his way out. There'll be no threat of interception by the BMW, which you can now just see making his way through Coram. No, darting out from the pit exit, now completing his final mandatory pit stop of today's race, is Didier Potvin, looking on the chances of another division win in AM. Aston Martin, in the absence of Alpine, have done remarkably well in this division. You do note here the emergence of a brand new fight, Jackal versus Martel. Now, this could be a curious one. Let's go to find on board with the attacking car of 2, watching on board with the Jackal. And this right now stands at 6th place. And this has been the major concern coming into this latter part of the race, and they knew that wet racing was going to be on the way past the first 15 minutes. As you see there, Karina Stinson allowing these 2 on pass. We'll catch on with her in a moment's time, because I am very curious to see what things are like from inside that Maserati. Plus, we get the opportunity to hear that brutal V8. I would even go as far to say the Maserati V8 sounds better than the Chevrolet one. Might be a controversial take on this grid. Not sure how many feathers I'll ruffle in saying that one, but we'll catch on with it later. Looking here with the Jackal. He's got solid closing distance on Karl Martel, and it's unfortunate to see here for Martel, because he had definitely one of the more out there strategies at the start of today's event. We did note an incident there for the number 6 just off of Coram, was going slow for Clinton Bourne. He seems to have restored order though at his own discretion. back on the topic of the spray as well, we mentioned it at Montreal. This was not a consideration maybe on the minds of many when they knew they were getting wet racing after the first 15 minutes of today's race, but it's something they're having to play up against here, and you can see that visibility massively compromised, so he has to duck off of the racing line a little bit there on the wet line to cool those tyres down onto the brakes. So the Jackal knows exactly where he's got to get that thing slammed down now. He's already faced the consequences of messing that up. So he's going to get that area nice, neat and tidy, if not a bit more on the hesitant scale for the rest of this race, knowing he can't afford another costly mistake, knowing right now he's 11 seconds from a possible lead. He's on a confident podium position in the semi-pros. It could go very tidily his way today if things slip up out in front. So he has to hold his nerve for what stands at this time. Number 99 up on two wheels at Murray's. Making their way down through towards Richards. 30 minutes left to go in today's race. It has breezed past quite quickly here because there's been a lot of action in terms of the discourse surrounding the change in weather. That has brought about quite a significant shift in the order of things across all three divisions. Of course, paired along with a very bizarre opening to this race where there was this almost 15-minute blind dash for the drivers to get the most out of those dry tyres. Now, we saw many of which try and bravely carry on for much longer than that. We saw how quickly the performance started to drop. In the pit lane at the moment, we're told, is the number 30. So that's David Tanguay in the pits. The 120 elects to stay out, so the 119 continues to forge up distance. But now we see from Tanguay is approaching things strategically following his loss of the lead to Christian Lebay. We're on board at the moment with the Jackal of Breaking Point Racing's 999 Chevrolet, hunting down another Chevrolet up in front, albeit in a separate division, but still, as it stands, fighting an overall 6th. Out in front of them there, that is the number 15 of Curtis Bell-Bray, who followed the Jackal a few laps ago into an uneasy run at these next set of corners, where both of them missed the braking zone. Rather ironic, given the fact they are both denizens of the Breaking Point Racing team. You see that for the Jackal was probably hugging that inside curb, and it's worked quite a solid bit of wonders for him. We see there was some trouble there alongside for Curtis Bell-Bray. Emerges fine behind them. And that does clear the road ahead for these two to continue their fight for an outright 6th place position, because things are looking rather curious from the Jackal's point of view. Out behind him, running very wide there. And that is a spin for the number 15. And I believe just narrowly avoided contact with the 42 of Adam Jeffrey. That was quite a scare for the 42. He seems to have come away from that. I'm not 100% sure if that was contact. There was a lot of spray. And as it looks to be the case, there's no damage on that 42 from the long shot camera there. So Jeffrey has cleared the margins by a hair's width. That is too close for comfort indeed. Cutting away from the Jackal and Martel's fight for just a moment here as we see them off the exit of Montreal. You see, oh my word, that was properly airborne for Curtis Bell-Bray. Now he's got a lot of dirt on his tyres. Can he get it stopped before the tyre wall? Just about. But he does get a tank slapper, a little bit of a love tap there against the wall as he drops position from Karina Stinson. Quickly glancing here at Agostini, because I didn't want to get away from them for too long, as it has been a notorious case. The moment we look away from these fights, it does come to a head. No news then for the rest of the top three at this time. The number 30 came in not long ago to serve their last pit stop. And Simard and Lebay have not reciprocated that motion at any one point. Better of the two on exit from Williams, but to what avail here is it going to be for the Jackal? Now both of them as far as they can be on the right-hand side, but even then that's the slightly slippier section of the line. We saw that the dry line was actually closer towards the middle before the braking zone at Brundle and Nelson. Up through turn 10 up in front. Here's the understanding of another car in the pit lane. Two cars in the pit lane as it stands at the moment. The 27 and the 616. So that's Brad Peacock and Andrew Veldkamp. Both of them in the pits at this time. Does little to affect this fight for 6th place between Martel and Jackal. But we see there as Martel gets the better of two exits. Actually, as I say, that's, well, it looks of it, actually the worst of two exits. We didn't see exactly what happened for Markle, but that big trip up over the curbs would have led us to believe Jackal was going to drop distance on the run down the centre straight, but quite the contrary, he's held on. And we see here at Riches, big trouble for Carl Markle. Eh? Where's he gone? Oh no, I believe we could be seeing troubles with the server. I'm just looking at it here and the numbers are dwindling massively. That could be trouble on the way. Now faces an uneasy dilemma with mass disconnects on the grid. What's the call by race controller? Base still leads, but he could be next at this time. That was such a bizarre thing to see, as we are noting multiple reconnects. Among them, as a matter of fact, was one of the top three, Vincent Simard, in the 120 Chevrolet. Now, it's worth noting, we are, I would not say quite yet out of the woods when it comes to connection troubles. Those of you who may remember over the last couple of weeks, in fact, the last month, it has been to try and get Alton Park underway. We thought maybe the road gets a little bit easier to travel upon on the run past Alton Park, but it seems then the plight of server troubles that have beset this series now for the last month and a half are not quite yet at their end. David Tanguay is in the pits. At this time, the number 30 doesn't appear to be released from the jacks at all. Quite the contrary, he's held on the jacks, even though his last pit stop is complete. So has he also disconnected? That's a very likely possibility. With 25 minutes left to go, it's not an easy position to be in for any of the remaining drivers, as it does feel a little... I'm not really sure what to make of the word here. I mean, it's been a very bizarre turn of events. So there are some drivers who have survived that disconnect wave. Others have suffered rather brutally at the hand of it, such as the case of the remaining podium drivers in Pro, being Simard and Tanguay. Both of them look to leave the podium behind because of a disconnect out of their control. They'll not be the most pleased at all. One that will be pleased, though, as he makes his way onto a division podium and into the top 5, is Wishful Winnings. Right now then, down to 16 vehicles, as we were quickly analysing the situation. The 120 and the 30 appearing to be, for at least the time being, out of action. This is a perspective we've been wanting to catch on with for a while, because I've been very curious to know how has she been able to do this today. That Maserati has been, for the longest time this season, an absolute death trap. Yet somehow, this is its most tame performance. Karina Stinson evidently has the Midas touch when it comes to the Maserati in wet racing, because this has been quite a thing to see. She's tamed this feral machine. Now you can see for what reason that comes with. It is incredibly hesitant throttle usage by Stinson at this time to keep the Maserati from, well, cleaving her head off, as it would seem, because that Maserati has been, as you can see it, a furious machine. And I suppose that maybe then tells the story as to why she was over 5 seconds down in qualifying. It's simply the case, had she pushed a percentile more, as mentioned earlier in the stream, that car would have spun. And that is exactly the limit she has to stay at here in order to survive today's event, less so than find anything of positions in it. It is survival in wet racing. It's always been survival in wet racing, but it's doubly so when you've got in a car designed almost entirely to kill you in the most extravagant manner possible. You saw their lock-up at Montreal, but stays with the recently lapping, I should say, their Aston Martin of Didier Potvin in what has been a very dramatic turn of events here today. The 120 and the 30 are back out on the track, but they're down in 11th and 12th, with Simard still yet to have served that last pit stop. We also noted among that disconnect wave now permanently out of this round, as we do note there, that was another disconnect for the number 23. Just a moment ago was Wishful Winnings' disconnect. We also noted there among the previous disconnects being permanent, that was for Curtis Belbray, the number, I believe, 15 in this race. And we see they're reconnecting, confirming our suspicions. That was wishful winning, suffering a disconnect on the grid. Now, it does raise a few eyebrows here on what's going to exactly come from race control. There is the possibility of partial points awarded over the course of this event, because we are sufficiently beyond the 2/3 mark. Now, that, of course, is still using a line of logic utilised by our friends over at the No Limit Racing League. The NLRL Sunday League operates by a very similar standard of rules. It was also the same story over what was, I would say, remiss to say, a nightmare, that being the second season of the Console Endurance Series, especially in its closing half, where connection troubles became absolutely rampant. It was a miracle that season even got to its end. But if they are to operate along the same line of thinking, that could see this red flagged and partial points awarded. But that is totally at the discretion of race control. I'm not sure exactly what they'll go for, but we'll be among the first to know about it. Vekere in. Winnings still in, of course. Much out of his own lack of control here, because there's a disconnect for him. Staying out, Adrian Zavala. Jackal likely to stay out, but we'll see of the 999. What does he choose to do? It was a very, very bizarre fight. The 999, though, is in. So rather curiously still, in comes the Jackal. What's of the 119 then? Will he come into the pits on this lap? Christian LeBay, as it does seem there, was forking over to the right, but he's gone too. What on earth has happened? Here in Snetterton, folks, I am at a complete loss for words. Zavala now leads. Nope, because Vekere's gone. The Jackal's still here. I think we're undergoing another disconnect wave here, folks. I'm not really sure what to say. It seems that their troubles in the United Kingdom don't really seem to be at an end. And again, having seen next season's calendar, they might want to reconsider their tune here if the UK has got such a curse to them. That has been quite the surprise. We are given the confirmation the 119 did attempt to reconnect. Right now, unsuccessful, as we are yet to access any onboard from the 119 Chevrolet. It's back out again. I think we could be in a bit of free fall here on this session. Well, my suggestion to the matter would be is to take a look back through the stream before that wave happened, because we were on board at the time. Possibly award partial points based off of a 75% completion margin. But of course, that's up to race control to decide. We're just throwing options at the table here. But that has been quite a shocking development here in Snetterton. And a pity as well, I'd say, because we've had, for all intents and purposes, 2/3 of a very solid race. We are told LeBay is back in. The 119 having reconnected to the field. His previous attempt was unsuccessful. That followed another disconnect shortly thereafter. This is one that is set to shunt this one to the lead. Adrian Zavala, through very curious circumstance, is about to lead outright, but albeit under strategy, could fall in behind the 999. That is a conundrum we'll face when we get to it. It does look to be the case, though, that the 46 will still hold the cards on that lead. The 161 is back in, that being Dylan Vekere. It has been a very perplexing turn of events here in Snetterton, I must say. 2 disconnect waves. One that now leaves Zavala alone in the lead, with the Jackal half the track away in 3rd. Potvin in 4th. And Vekere currently in 5th, in an order that is soon to shift with the arrival of Cedric Grenier-Massey to the top 5. LeBay is about to lose what was a leading position, a confident leading position at that. 17.5 minutes left to go. Fate of the rest of the grid left rather uncertain. David Tanguay was one of the earliest casualties then of this disconnect wave, and it was a pity as well because his strategy looked fairly confident. He was looking to go on the counter-offensive in that podium, trying to get earlier strategy off of both Simard and LeBay. Right now, then, it has been a very, very unfortunate turn of events. Into the pit lane comes Wishful Winnings, and now this is quite the sting for him because he disconnected still with a mandatory pit stop to serve at this time. 16 minutes left to go. Right now, as far as nearest fights go, there are no nearest fights. That's it. 119 is back out on track here in a broadly scattered grid. Going to catch back on board then, as Adrian Zavala is now into the pits. Now, is this of his own volition? It looks like it for the 46. Yes, in goes Adrian Zavala. Coming in to serve his last mandatory pit stop of this event. 16 minutes left to go. The rain here to stay here in Snetterton. What has been a particularly dark chapter of the season for these drivers. The 161 reconnected was another disconnect there for Dylan Vekere. It does kind of look like the stability of the server is in free fall here, and it's only going to get worse before it gets any better. With a quarter of an hour left to go. Curious to see what the word is by race control on this matter, but it definitely is going to be a very curious end to this race. One that could very likely see, for the first time in the series' history, a lower division outright victory. As we are there, given the point of view of Adrian Zavala, who leaves the pit lane, 15 minutes between himself and the checkered flag in the lead. As you heard it there, the pit window's shut. That leaves Simard and LeBay without any options. And that is already bad news for what has been horrible news in the last 10 minutes for these two. The last of the top 10 positions right now held by second in pro. And really, there's not much telling what's going to happen to them at the end of this race if they are to take their way to the checkered flag. Still with that pit to serve. That's going to be, I believe, penalties, like sizable penalties at the end of this session. Well, then we'll leave you on board with Zavala. We'll be back to you in a moment's time. So as it stands right now, with 13 minutes left to go here in Snetterton, it's Adrian Zavala to lead over the Jackal in second, with Didier Potvin leading Am from an outright third place. Cedric Grenier-Massé makes fourth overall, divisioned in second. Adam Jeffrey rounds out the top five to the last of the podium positions in the semi-pro class. Andrew Velkamp in sixth, Brad Peacock in seventh. Heading up the pro field is Vincent Simard in an outright eighth. Christian Boisvert in ninth, and Christian LeBay rounds out the top 10. Now, this is forming up to be one of the closer gaps, as he's 2.2 seconds in closing on Boisvert, who took his first AM Division win last round at Alton Park. It seems then that connection troubles in Great Britain are far from at their end, and a round now beset by troubles with the server. One's got to catch on board, though, with LeBay as he looks to intercept Boisvert. A very, very bizarre angle of things. We're watching LeBay currently fight for ninth. After having led the race for the longest time, that disconnect has not done him any favours. He now struggles to maintain a position within the top 10, and one that he'll likely drop away from because of that still unserved pit stop run, as the pit window shut just before he could get in. Leaves him high and dry, rather ironically, in wet conditions. You see there, Boisvert out wide just before turn 10. That allows Labbé easy leeway. That was just sorry, after turn 10, just before turn 11. It allows him easy leeway in towards that 9th place spot. He takes hold of position, but how long does he exactly stand to hold that position by the end of this race? Do note then, very close fight from out back was for but a time there, Tanguy v Stinson. Tanguy now in hot pursuit, back into the top 15. Not that there's much other options for him. What has been a very grim turn, I would say, to today's event. Stinson late on the brakes there, trying to wrestle the Maserati, but it's fighting it back now in the closing 10 minutes of today's race. By nature of looking at the category standings, Stinson is actually 4th at this time. She's division 6th in the AMS, so this disconnect wave coupled with the high casualty rate for the AMS has opened up just enough of an opportunity for her here to see a top 5 in division. Moreover, it's a likely case also that she'll be able to make her way even closer into that top 5. She's only a single point away, I should remind, of the top 5 in the AM Division Championship. Looking at that there, that was from Matthew Shanowski, of course, one of the DNFs in today's event. So, again, it's looking very positive, even in spite of where things stand at the moment for the Maserati of Karina Stinson, because over the course of this season, she's been able to persevere against her contemporaries in AM and has made her way up from the back of the top 10 now. By looks of it, after this round, will be in the top 5 for the run into the United States. And then later for that penultimate round into Australia as we enter the last 4 rounds of the season. Following what has been an incredibly troubled last month and a half here in the British chapter, one that initially started with weeks of delays to get Alton Park under our belts, now followed up today here in changeable conditions at Snetterton. Already was a struggle for the start for some. Now that 2 disconnect waves has beset the grid down to only 16 remaining functional vehicles. Of 22 entered today, we're down 6 cars, multiple displaced. Right now, we are on the cusp of a first overall division victory, or overall win, I should say, for a lower division. What a soundtrack that is, though, from the Maserati. We do note there is some trouble for the number 8 here. And that's yellow flags out momentarily for the number 8 of Ruben Pereira. Just quickly glancing back in as well, if we can, on that Maserati. Just before we do that, we do see here a little exchange of trackside position for Jeffrey and Pereira. We're going to quickly locate the Maserati again. Just a curious thing to note, of course, with the Maserati Gran Turismo. The MC Stradale is this particular model, 4.7 litre 90-degree V8 engine. If I'm not mistaken, as a matter of fact, that engine is co-developed by Ferrari. Yes, the 4.7 litre F136Y. So this is as close as we dare get to Ferrari on the GT4 grid, albeit Maserati no longer have a wider presence in GT4. It's really only here in the virtual space where Maserati get to be on a GT4 grid like this. As for the most part, their endeavours, at least in GT racing, now remain concentrated around the very small and still rather niche GT2 category with the MC20. Taking a look around here, BMW looking at a top 5 overall is a very curious footnote of today's race. Right now, division second for Cedric Grenier-Massey of Let's Race Mate BMW. Worth noting he came up into second in the championship standings alongside Didier Potvin, who now leads after Alton Park. So these two will continue to forge out that distance from one another and from the rest of the field with 5 minutes left to go in today's event. Technically speaking here, it's a curious one saying as to who's actually coming out on top in the pros. Because when we look here from the 23 and the 119, it's a perspective of about 4 corners at this time. Depending on what kind of penalty is dished out to Simard and LeBay for not having served their second of 2 mandatory pit stops, this could actually be another win for wishful winnings. And, well, without trying to sound corny about it, it is a wishful win for wishful winnings in this case. But it depends on what kind of penalty is dished out to these two, because there is one coming. We know there's one coming. I believe that might have been another... Was that another disconnect there for Dylan Vekere? Whatever it is, it's promoted Karina Stinson to 15th in today's event. I believe it might have actually just... No, yeah, that was a disconnect. That leaves us now 15 cars left, 4.5 minutes left to go. It is a game of survival. We are now in the end game here at Snetterton. Above all things, the drivers just need to survive today's event. In terms of the nearest battles, again, there really isn't any. It's a very unique spot for us at this time because we've never often seen the lobby continue on after a disconnect wave. That usually throws up some alarm bells for the stewards. See here from the Jackal, looking at division second and outright second at this time. Wrestling his Chevrolet once again. We got on board with him earlier on in the race to see this point of view from the 999 as he makes his way down the Bentley straight. Up in front of him there, that's the Maserati of Karina Stinson. Out behind him is Vincent Simard. 3 minutes left to go. And Adrian Zavala now has 2 more laps to play with, this being the penultimate one coming up now. Staying on board to the number 46, it is a very unique perspective to find here today in this event. Given what all of the drivers have now gone through over what has now been an hour and a half's worth of racing, as we do fare down against one more lap after this one here on the penultimate lap of today's event. That never once since the inception of a multiple division system in the Competizione Performance League GT4 Pro-Am Cup America Series has a lower division, anything lower than Pro, taken a victory ahead of the Pro drivers. Today, in what I must say has been a very divisive round of the championship, one that I imagine is going to go down with a bit of a sour note with the rest of the grid following today's proceedings, has created such miraculous opportunity for Adrian Zavala. And I would say, even in spite of the fact that today has definitely brought out some, albeit incredibly unique circumstances, some, I would say, unprecedented circumstances, ones that may not be allowed to fly in other series. This one has not sat idly by with the chances he's been given. It has been an incredibly confusing last half hour of today's round of the championship, but one thing is for certain, as we approach the next couple of corners here before the checkered flag, That comes up into the next lap, I should say, as well. This one has delivered on a unforgettable drive. Perhaps to some in the history books will be for all of the wrong reasons, but we still have one more lap to play with here. So let's not get our hopes too high. I think that's what we were doing for a moment there. I think we were getting hyped up into a last lap speech. We're not quite there yet. We've still got one more to play. I suppose everything has been rather confusing over the course of today's event. You join us back in the chat at the moment there. We just see from Jason Bush asking what on earth happened. 2 disconnect waves. 2. I'm surprised as I'm as surprised as you are that the grid has survived this one, but we see onto the final lap. Now leading is Adrian Zavala, and this is right now, should there not be a third one coming our way, the first time ever in this series' history that a lower division has taken a win overall. Ahead of the pros, ahead of the AMs, it's semi-pro at this time, spearheading the charge into the history books for Adrian Zavala. We'll catch on to him in a moment's time as we are noting the emergence of a brand new fight. Adam Jeffrey gets the leap on Cedric Grenier-Massey for an outright 4th place. Now it does little to taper their positions by division. They're still both looking at podiums today, with Jeffrey in 3rd and Grenier-Massey in 2nd. That does conclude our latest of overtakes. You can see it was broadly different performance to the table here in the last 30 minutes between BMW and Chevrolet at this time. From what was a 2/10 gap advancing is now 1.5 retreating for Grenier-Massey versus Jeffrey. And so as we go to catch back on board to Adrian Zavala, I must say, of all circumstances to create a race win, while he was looking at one in division, having that one become elevated to an outright win is certainly one that'll bring a great smile to Zavala's face. The exit here of Nelson making his way towards turns 10, 11 and 12 here at the Snetterton circuit. What has been by and large the most bizarre round of the Competizione Performance League GT4 Pro-Am Cup America Series' history does come to a close here, making our way up and around Coram Corner through hell and high water and 2 disconnect waves, the survivor among them, the 46, down towards the line then to greet the checkered flags. For the first time in this series' history, a lower division will take an outright victory, and it's Adrian Zavala to the line for Mercedes to win in Snetterton. A brilliant performance then by Zavala. He was looking at a division win already. This sweetens the deal for the 46. The Mexican talent, the first ever lower division class to take an overall win ahead of the dominant pros. It's a 130-second penalty to Simard and LeBay. That could shift winnings to a division win in pro. Seeing the division win coming up then not long from now in the AMS will be Didier Potvin. A solid distance up the road of his nearest compatriot being Cedric Grenier-Massey. Karina Stinson confirms 4th in the AMS, a solid position for her, having survived what could very well have been one of the most challenging races of her sim racing career with Maserati. And I must say, the fact that she has not seen, I believe, a single incident today in wet conditions in the Maserati, that is miraculous. Down towards the line, though, to see our next division win as we'll wait on confirmation on the latter. Down towards the line, then Didier Potvin secures yet another win for Aston Martin in the AM division. Takes the win here from 3rd place overall. From behind him was Wishful Winnings, and we'll wait to see the result on that, because that could be another win for him. Once we see the clarification on those 2 penalties, 130-second penalty awarded to both Simard and LeBay for an unserved pit stop, both of them reconnecting after the disconnect wave just short of the 15-minute pit window closure. To the line there for 4th, Adam Jeffrey sees the podium position in semi-pro. Cedric Grenier-Massey division 2nd in the AMS. Next to the line will be the last 2 to make it, the number 616 and the number 8. And we wait to see then the confirmation on the news. Now, we are told there may be the finishing positions before the disconnect wave, but just before we do see that, that does leave the writing on the wall for Wishful Winnings. Another win for the number 23. So quite literally, was a wishful win for wishful winnings. He'll be wishing that win stays because there is the possibility they take the finishing positions before the disconnect wave, which could massively shift things. But as we see it on track at the moment, your division winners in Pro is wishful winnings, in Semi-Pro is Adrian Zavala outright, and in the AMS, it's Didier Potvin. Now, this could all still change. I would like to preface the next week worth of coverage on this series with a massive if. If this is the result we're seeing, those are your winners. If they don't change the results, this is how it will stay, and this is how it will be reported as we head in towards our American chapter, starting off in Watkins Glen in New York next week. It's all a big if, and that really does summarize this race, a massive if. But it has been a very solid race indeed, and very well done to those who have been able to survive undoubtedly the most trying conditions we've ever faced in this series, and this is unprecedented stuff to have come through and seen this for the first time. Adrian Zavala outright win from semi-pro, the first time anyone has done that ahead of the pro drivers since the inception of multiple classes in this championship. Taking a look at where the road takes us next in this series, next round on August 18th, otherwise the early hours of the morning of August 19th, if you're tuning in from the United Kingdom, as we now, sorry, not August 9th, that's today, next week, sorry, 25th of August, otherwise the early hours of the morning of August 26th, we'll be live from Watkins Glen International in Schuyler County, New York State, as we take the trip across the Atlantic and over to the United States of America, as we finally go to America in the GT4 Pro-Am Cup America Series, after a long stint spent primarily in Europe with a little trip down to Africa and round 3 of the championship. Coming up after Watkins Glen, then Indianapolis, Bathurst and Kota, with a brief little jaunt over the Pacific to Australia for the penultimate round, the season finale back in America. Well, it's been a very curious round indeed. If you're joining us for action later on this week, 7 p.m. BST this Saturday on the, I believe the 22nd, yes, 22nd of August, as we head to La Castellet with the Continental Racing League. If you're joining us this Sunday, 6:30 p.m. BST, Season 7, Round 2 of the NLRL Sunday League powered by TRTN. As we do head to what are presumably wet conditions in the upcoming sprint race at Bathurst. Well, that'll be all from us here today. Have a wonderful rest of your evening. Take care and good night.